My best friend is a total saint. After she was assaulted by a stranger in a hotel and got pregnant, I advised her to have an abortion and report it to the police, but she cursed me for being cruel. Later, she gave birth to the child and ran away, leaving a note asking me to raise the child for her. As a single mother, it's hard for me to raise a child alone. Your boyfriend surely won't mind you having a child. After I went through all the hardships to raise the child, she came back with the child's father to snatch the child away, completing the whole vicious cycle. Given a second chance at life, should I raise her child for her? I'll give her a good slap instead. 1. Jojo, what should I do about the baby in my belly? Even though his father forced me, he's still an innocent little life, isn't he? My best friend Meng Yao's eyes were red from crying, while she gently stroked her belly with her hand, looking every bit like a great and strong mother. If I remember correctly, in my previous life, it was also after she got pregnant that she came to me for help. She portrayed herself as the perfect victim, saying she was pulled into a room at a hotel and impregnated after being violated by a strange man. I was so furious at the time that I grabbed her and wanted to go to the police station to report it, but she hesitated and refused to go. Jojo, I saw that the man seemed to have been drugged. He didn't mean to do it. Reporting it to the police would ruin his whole life. No matter how much I tried to persuade her, she refused to go to the police. Back then, I had no choice but to stand from a rational perspective and suggest she terminate the pregnancy, but she flew into a rage. Someone usually so weak, who wouldn't even fight back when a female colleague at the company threw coffee at her, was now pointing at my nose and cursing me out. Liang Qiao, he's a little life. Someone as cold-hearted as you deserves to die. After saying that, she turned and left, and afterwards, under the influence of the plot, I actually felt guilty and apologized to her, covering all her pregnancy expenses, not realizing that this well-intentioned advice would end up costing me my life, too. It was only after I was killed by her domineering CEO husband that I began to awaken to the plot. The world we live in is an old-fashioned domineering CEO novel. Meng Yao is the saintly, innocent female lead of this novel, and I am the cannon fodder tool character within it. In my previous life, she disappeared shortly after giving birth to the child, leaving behind a letter asking me to raise the child. In the letter, she wrote that as a single mother, she couldn't take care of the child, and if her parents found out she was pregnant before marriage, they would be looked down upon. But I was different. She said my boyfriend's family wouldn't mind me having a child out of wedlock, and that I was strong enough to take good care of her child. After leaving that letter, she vanished without a trace, never to be found again. Yet I stayed behind and bore all the suffering because of that child. My boyfriend of 4 years broke up with me, my parents were gossiped about and eventually died depressed, and the well-paying job I had worked so hard for was lost because I had to raise the child. And what about Meng Yao? She was abroad playing the "you love me, I don't love you, you chase, I flee" game with a domineering CEO. A game where neither of them could escape. After the two of them had their fun abroad, they returned to the country and demanded the child from me, just because I couldn't bear to part with the child I had raised for 4 years. She went crying to the domineering CEO. Back then, she was the one who made me abort the fruit of our love, and now she refuses to return the child to us. The domineering male lead had me killed over that very statement. Afterwards, Meng Yao even stood before my grave, brainwashing the child I had raised for 4 years. Even though your godmother wanted me to abort you back then, it was because I loved you that I kept you. Now that she's dead, let's not hold a grudge against her. And then that child began to hate me too, even feeling disgusted at the mere mention of my name. But now, everything has returned to the beginning. Meng Yao sits across from me, weeping as she describes how she was violated. I truly didn't know him. I was so scared when he dragged me into the room. As she speaks, she trembles and sheds tears, as if recalling the most terrifying thing in the world. Sitting across from her, I calmly took a sip of coffee, though inside I was seething with the urge to tear her apart. Meng Yao claimed not to know that stranger, but in truth, she had known from the start that he was Gu Nanzhou, the CEO of the Gu Group. Before leaving, she even left 200 yuan by his bedside, boldly calling it a service fee, which only fueled the male lead's obsession. Now, she's crafting this victim persona just to build up a saintly image. It's just that without me, the villain, to contrast against, she finally couldn't hold back after rambling on for so long. Chow chow, why aren't you saying anything? What should I really do? Meng Yao's eyes seemed to hold a hint of anxiety and expectation, hoping I'd say the same things as in our past life, but sorry, in this life, I won't be giving her what she wants. What to do, Meng Yao? You're not thinking of reporting it and getting an abortion, are you? This is a living life we're talking about, and this has already happened. Reporting it to the police would ruin that man's life. You're also at fault in this matter. Why did you go to a hotel in the middle of the night? If you hadn't gone, this situation wouldn't have happened, right? I gave back to her, word for word, exactly what she had said in my previous life. These words completely stunned Meng Yao. She stared at me wide-eyed in disbelief, and it took her a long moment before she awkwardly spoke up to save face. How could that be? How could I be so cruel as to abort this child? Chow chow, you're overthinking it. You have to understand, I was often backstabbed by her before. When we were in school and she was being bullied, I reported it to the school, but she told me not to make a fuss. After we started working, when an old man tried to scam her, I stepped forward to protect her, but she told me in front of the old man to respect the elderly. This time I finally went along with her wishes, and I believe she will definitely be satisfied. After such an awkward conversation for quite a while, I couldn't stand it anymore and was about to slip away when Meng Yao suddenly called out to me, Chow chow, I've decided to keep this child, but I need to go for a prenatal checkup in a few days. Could you lend me some money? She said this while stroking her belly, avoiding eye contact and speaking hesitantly. I knew her guilty conscience wasn't because she was asking to borrow money from me, but because she had already used up all my money. Ever since we graduated from university and joined GU Corporation, she had convinced me to pool our salaries together, saying we'd spend it as best friends, but Meng Yao was naturally the foolish type. How else could she have attracted GU Corporation's equally idiotic CEO, Gu Nanzhou, working as Gu Nanzhou's secretary? She was either spilling coffee on him or messing up documents all day long. By the end of the month, her salary deductions would bring it down to zero. Even so, she would still take my salary to donate to the welfare home, secretly giving away half of it each time without telling me. She basked in others' praise, feeling smug, but when I questioned her, she scolded me for not knowing anything about giving back. Just like that, after working at GU's for a year, I hadn't saved a single penny. A few days ago, I heard that several more children had arrived at the welfare home, so I donated this month's salary directly to them. I made up an excuse on the spot, determined that even if the money were to be fed to dogs, I wouldn't give it to her. What? You donated all the money to those kids at the welfare home? Then what about my child? Meng Yao's voice was sharp and filled with dissatisfaction, as if I had done something utterly wicked with her money. Now the fox has finally shown its tail. I put on an innocent look and asked her with a puzzled expression, Yao Yao, but you said the children at the welfare home have no parents. The more we give, the happier they'll be. Besides, you're still here for the baby in your belly. We can't be that selfish. Meng Yao turned pale at my words, seemingly realizing she had spoken inappropriately. Chow chow, that's not what I meant. It's just that I really have no money left. No money? That can't be. We both work at GU Corporation, with a base salary of 20,000 a month. Where's your paycheck for this month? I pretended not to understand. Meng Yao was visibly panicking now. Of course, I knew she had resigned as soon as she found out she was pregnant, counting on me to support her and the unborn child. I was fired from the company after they found out I was pregnant. As a mere plot device in this story, it's my duty to deliver the female lead to the male lead, not let her stay and cause trouble for others. What? The Gu family actually knows labor laws. Yao Yao, just wait, I'll definitely get justice for you. Meng Yao was in despair, but I was overjoyed. 3. Perhaps due to the protagonist's halo effect, Meng Yao really managed to re-enter the GU Corporation with just a few casual words from me, and her position was none other than Gu Nanzhou's secretary anyway. I've made up my mind to be an NPC who stays far away from the male and female leads. Once I've saved enough money, I'll quickly leave the GU Corporation, this den of trouble, but the female lead truly lives up to her title. Her name is something I can hear even while squatting in the restroom. What kind of idiot is that Meng Yao anyway? She's either feeling nauseous or dizzy all day long, and she can't even print a document correctly when assigned. Not only does she flirt with that idiot boss of ours all day long, but she also thinks of us as women who got ahead by flaunting our chests. Aren't the Gu and Song families about to arrange a marriage? Let's see how the Song family's eldest daughter deals with that seductive bitch. She's a real heiress. I was squatting in the toilet stall, eavesdropping on the other two secretaries of Gu Nanzhou complaining about Meng Yao outside. I used to always hear Meng Yao complain about being targeted in the secretary group, saying her two colleagues were jealous that the CEO treated her differently. I didn't have a brain before, but now that I suddenly have one, I only feel sympathy for those two secretaries. In real life, no office worker can tolerate idiot colleagues and a boss like that, right? Just as I was thinking this, a message from Meng Yao came through. Ciao ciao, I really can't handle this workload anymore. Could you help me with this document? Also, could you lend me 10,000 yuan? The people from the welfare home have already contacted me. If you don't give me this money, what will the people at the welfare home think of me? Over 20 messages kept pouring in, the screen densely packed with Meng Yao's vanity and repulsiveness. Since Meng Yao started working again, life indeed wasn't as easy as she had imagined. The physical discomfort of early pregnancy combined with the heavy workload caused her to lose several pounds in just a month, her entire face pale as a ghost without a trace of color. She would often come to me whining and crying to complain, but I went about my work as usual, offering only verbal comfort in response to her pleas for help. In my previous life, after she quit her job and moved into my house, she enjoyed a comfortable life at home while preparing for pregnancy, and routinely brainwashed me by boasting about being the greatest mother in the world, enduring so much hardship just to give birth to her precious child. It's been less than a month, and Meng Yao has completely transformed. With sunken eye sockets and a deathly pale complexion, she looks as if she might faint at any moment, yet even in this state, she still can't forget to maintain her saintly persona. Reading the text message she sent, I set my phone to "Do Not Disturb" with an expressionless face, determined to ignore Meng Yao's messy affairs for good. But as expected, the unexpected still happened, for on an ordinary weekday morning, I was assaulted. The woman who attacked me was dressed head to toe in designer labels, her every gesture exuding the air of a wealthy heiress, someone clearly far beyond my usual social circle. Yang Qiao, you're that vixen who seduced Nan Zhou in the CEO's office last night, aren't you? The girl walked up to me, her eyes filled with clear disdain and arrogance. I was completely stunned by the slap, and it took me a while to recognize the girl who hit me from the whispers of the people around. Song Zhaozhao, the vicious female supporting character in this domineering CEO novel. She is also the fiancée of Gu Nanzhou and the eldest daughter of the Song family, as mentioned by those two secretaries yesterday, if I remember correctly. This fiancé of the male lead Gu Nanzhou also meets a tragic end later on, in the previous life, when Meng Yao returned from abroad to claim the child. The Song family had already been bankrupted by Gu Nanzhou. Resentful of Meng Yao's interference, Song Zhaozhao continuously targeted her later on, ultimately ending up with her family destroyed and herself dead. You were sitting on his lap last night. Did you think I wouldn't recognize you just because you only gave me your name without showing your face? Me seducing Gu Nanzhou? After my mind went blank for a few seconds, I instantly understood what was going on. I looked up and sure enough, I saw Meng Yao hiding in the crowd not far away. Last night, when she was having an affair with Gu Nanzhou, she was discovered by his wife. To get out of the situation, she gave my name. I was so angry my scalp went numb, while Meng Yao turned pale, looking at me with pleading eyes. Oh my God, Liang Qiao usually seems so honest, but in private she's so shameless, even daring to seduce President Gu. Exactly. I heard she has a good friend who works as a secretary for President Gu. I heard that person is really nice. How come her own character is so terrible? Meng Yao from the secretarial department is famous for being beautiful and kind-hearted. Well, only a pushover like her would be friends with Liang Qiao. Colleagues standing not far away pointed at me, not bothering to hide the disdain in their eyes. As a cannon fodder tool in the book, all my appearances were meant to highlight the female lead's genuinely kind and beautiful persona, and all her good deeds were achieved by sucking my blood. So, the heavens gave me a chance to start over, to set everything right. She wanted me to take the blame for her, but I deliberately pretended to know nothing. I curled my lips into a smile at Meng Yao and gave a slight nod. Seeing my reaction, Meng Yao almost instantly relaxed. gradually becoming smug from the surrounding praise and flattery. It was at this moment that I spoke to Song Zhao Zhao with righteous indignation. Miss Song, you've mistaken me for someone else. I clocked out on time last night. Moreover, the CEO's office isn't a place a junior employee like me can just enter at will. Only senior executives and Mr. Gu's secretaries have the authority to go in. If you don't believe me, you can check the surveillance footage. Upon hearing my words, the smug expression on Meng Yao's face instantly turned to panic, while the two from the secretarial department who were watching the commotion were utterly terrified. Miss Song, last night, Meng Yao was the only one from our secretarial department working overtime. We wouldn't dare do something like seducing Mr. Gu. As soon as one person finished speaking, their finger immediately pointed toward Meng Yao, who was standing not far away. Everyone's gaze instantly shifted in that direction. No, it wasn't me. Meng Yao frantically shook her head in denial. Song Zhao Zhao walked a few steps in that direction and stood before Meng Yao. After sizing her up for a moment, as if suddenly realizing something, she flew into a rage and slapped her twice. Fine, it seems you're not just a home-wrecking vixen who seduces other people's fiancés, but also a low-class, despicable tramp. Meng Yao was slapped to the ground, covering her face and crying pitifully. Miss Song, I only brought Mr. Gu coffee because I saw he was still working overtime alone. As Mr. Gu's fiancé, you don't even care about him yourself. How can you be jealous when someone else shows him concern? Song Zhao Zhao was already furious, and Meng Yao's words directly ignited her temper. What did you say, you vixen? Are homewreckers this brazen nowadays? If I don't teach you a lesson today, you won't know your place. The scene was in utter chaos. Meng Yao covered her face, screaming hysterically on the ground, crying and begging everyone to save her. But in this situation, no one dared to step in and break up the fight, fearing they might get accidentally hurt. I was standing to the side watching the drama unfold. Just as I saw Meng Yao being beaten to the point she could barely make a sound, the man's hand suddenly intercepted Song Zhao Zhao's slap. The male lead of this book, Gu Nanzhou, made a dazzling entrance, standing at 6 feet tall with a cold, noble face. He truly possessed all the qualities of a novel's male lead. If he hadn't ordered his subordinate to run me over with a car in my past life, I might still be admiring his good looks right now. But now, I just want to kill this asshole immediately. 5. Gu Nanzhou, his face dark, grabbed Song Zhao Zhao's hand as she was about to slap down, shielding the delicate, weeping Meng Yao behind him. Song Zhao Zhao, what madness are you causing here? Song Zhao Zhao's eyes reddened with anger as she pointed at Meng Yao and loudly demanded, I'm causing madness. Gu Nanzhou, the Gu and Song families have already discussed a marriage alliance. As your fiancé, am I not allowed to deal with a vixen trying to seduce you? But Gu Nanzhou, with his thick layer of self-delusion, was clearly relying on being a kept man to advance his career, yet still acted as if he were bestowing his patronage. He looked at Song Zhao Zhao with disdain, snorted coldly, and spoke. Song Zhao Zhao, do you think being the eldest daughter of the Song family makes you so great? In my heart, you're not even worth one finger of Yao Yao. Apologize to Yao Yao right now, or you can forget about your future status as the Gu family's fiancé. Upon hearing this, Song Zhao Zhao's eyes instantly reddened, and with a choked voice, she uttered that classic line, Gu Nanzhou, what exactly is it about me that doesn't compare to her? You're inferior to Yao Yao in every way. She may not be as wealthy as you, but she has the kindest heart in the world. Even though she's just a junior employee, she donates money to the children at the welfare home every month without caring about gains or losses. Can you match such sincerity? As Gu Nanzhou spoke these words, he kept gazing affectionately at the woman in his arms. Meng Yao also looked bashful, as if the two were truly in love. In contrast, Song Zhao Zhao just stood there in a daze, crying, seemingly falling into self-doubt. The plot was clearly heading toward the cliché of the villainous female supporting character being humiliated. Meng Yao nestled in Gu Nanzhou's embrace, her eyes filled with an indescribable shyness. Only after Song Zhao Zhao had been sufficiently humiliated did she step forward softly and speak. Miss Song, how could a girl like me hold a grudge against others? But just because I don't mind doesn't mean others don't. You should still apologize to my good friend Liang Qiao. Her gracious and appropriate remarks immediately won praise from her colleagues, but only I wanted to rush up and give her a few punches. She knows our dynamic all too well. Since we were kids, whenever something like this happened, I would always charge into battle for her, and then she would magnanimously forgive others, while I ended up offending one group after another. Just like now, to highlight her magnanimity, she insisted on having Song Xiaoxiao apologize to me. She assumed I would definitely curse out Song Xiaoxiao for her sake, but she didn't care in the slightest whether I'd face retaliation afterward. So now, meeting Meng Yao's expectant gaze, I directly stepped up with a smile and went all out. I will not accept your apology, Miss Song. You simply can't compare to our Yao Yao. Your family is so wealthy, and all the good deeds you've done since childhood amount to donating tens of millions to organizations every year. How can that compare to our Yao Yao donating 10,000 yuan from our shared payment account to the orphanage every month? Let me tell you, our President Gu has made it clear, you'd better apologize to Yao Yao immediately, otherwise, President Gu will not accept the funding from your Song family. I delivered this impassioned tirade with such fervor that I truly looked like a loyal best friend standing up for Meng Yao. Because of my words, the previously noisy company lobby instantly fell silent. Now, not only did Meng Yao's expression change drastically, but even Gu Nanzhou's face turned pale and flushed in patches, glaring at me with a dark, fierce expression. According to Meng Yao's intention, I should have stepped forward to defend her, then expressed sympathy for her kindness and generosity, rather than indirectly calling them a freeloader and a fake saint. Everyone unanimously turned their gaze toward Meng Yao, Gu Nanzhou, and me. At that moment, someone muttered, I always wondered. Meng Yao's monthly deductions were more than her salary. I thought she was a rich kid donating to the orphanage every month, but it turns out she was using Liang Qiao's money to boost her own image, and our company is actually relying on funding from the Song Group. From President Gu's attitude, I thought the Song Group was begging to work with us. The quiet voice clearly reached everyone's ears, and instantly, murmurs of discussion arose. Previously, because of Gu Nanzhou's arrogant attitude toward Song Xiaoxiao, many colleagues in the company thought Gu Corporation was incredibly impressive, to the point where even a top-tier enterprise like the Song Group had to beg for cooperation. Now I hear that the Song family has been funding the Gu family all along, taking someone else's things and then slapping them in the face. It's like eating soft rice with a tough attitude. In an instant, everyone's gaze toward Meng Yao and Gu Nanzhou changed. What they initially thought was a romantic drama now seemed like a complete moral collapse. Song Xiaoxiao seemed to snap out of it too. Her sorrowful eyes instantly turned sharp, fixed intently on the two people still clinging to each other in front of her. As the eldest daughter of the Song family, her parents set up a foundation for her from birth, donating millions every year, yet, it couldn't compare to the kindness Meng Yao showed by donating someone else's money. And now, the Gu family is still relying on her family's company. What right does Gu Nanzhou have to boss her around like that? The murmurs from the crowd grew louder. Hearing this, Meng Yao immediately jumped in anxiously to cut me off. Liang Qiao, what nonsense are you talking? As if I didn't understand human language, I continued with a pained expression. Yao Yao, I know you have the kindest heart. Today, she must apologize to you. Seeing that I was about to say more, Meng Yao anxiously tugged at Gu Nanzhou's sleeve. Nanzhou, I don't blame Miss Song, I'm feeling a bit unwell in my stomach. Let's leave quickly. Gu Nanzhou's face turned ashen. My words, combined with Song Xiaoxiao's mocking gaze, completely shattered his domineering CEO image. On the spot, he flew into a rage, shook off Meng Yao's hand, and strode towards the company. Meng Yao shot me a resentful glare before anxiously chasing after Gu Nanzhou. 6. After Gu Nanzhou and Meng Yao left, the surrounding colleagues also tactfully dispersed. I had originally planned to slip away quietly, but halfway there, Song Xiaoxiao called out to stop me. She pulled me aside privately, and the two of us stood there in an awkward face-off. Miss Song, what is it? Song Xiaoxiao clearly looked somewhat embarrassed. She quickly rummaged in her bag, pulled out a card, and shoved it into my hand. Here's $100,000. You, take a good rest. Hearing this, I instantly understood it was the young lady's compensation for that slap. I hadn't really cared much about that slap to begin with, and now I only felt a growing affection for the beauty before me. In my past life, it was clearly the Song family who provided the funds and technology to the Gu Corporation, helping it become a top-tier enterprise. Yet, in the end, I was heartlessly discarded by Gu Nanzhou. Now it seems Gu Nanzhou and Meng Yao are indeed the same kind of trash. I silently accepted the card and then casually added the young lady on WeChat, before I could even return to my workstation. Rumors had already spread throughout the company. The news of Meng Yao seducing Gu Nanzhou and being a fake saintess was buzzing all over the company. The persona she had painstakingly built almost instantly crumbled, but before I could even blame Meng Yao for using my name as a shield, she specifically came from the CEO's office to our department and launched into a tirade of accusations against me. Yang Qiao, why did you push me out this morning? Do you have any idea that because of you, my reputation is completely ruined? I was directly angered into a laugh by Meng Yao's words. Staring into her eyes filled with resentment, I spoke coldly. When did I push you out? I was just explaining to everyone that I didn't seduce President Gu. You were the one seducing President Gu in the office, yet you pinned this seductress label on me. And now you're questioning why I didn't stop this dirty water from being thrown at me. It was the first time she had seen me tear off the facade and expose her little schemes. She stood there in disbelief, stunned. Since childhood, no matter what happened, I had never gotten angry with her. Even if this world is a novel, the feelings I once invested were genuine. So now, at the moment of truly tearing off the facade, there's still a twinge of heartache. I didn't mean to. As my best friend, can't you just tolerate this little thing? After Meng Yao snapped back to reality, she responded as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Not feeling she had done anything wrong at all, according to her expectations, I should be groveling and apologizing to her right now, then taking full responsibility for this matter at the company. Yet, looking at her face, which she prides herself on as a benevolent angel, I feel nothing but disgust and nausea. I'm not your mother. Why should I put up with it? When you went to the office to flirt with Mr. Gu, why didn't you think about holding back then? After saying that, I ignored Meng Yao's furious expression, packed up my things at my workstation, and left. 6. Even before returning to the department, Song Zhaozhao had already agreed to my request to work at Song Corporation. I knew very well that if I had any further contact with Meng Yao, she would eventually manage to ruin me all over again. Since we had a falling out, the two of us haven't been in touch much. I've been quietly working at Song Corporation, while Meng Yao's daily routine involves sharing her wealthy lifestyle. On social media, her social media posts are either about luxury goods or ultrasound images of her son. Completely shifting away from her previous persona of regularly sharing charity activities, our mutual friends all envy her for marrying into wealth in the comments, with some even jokingly asking Meng Yao to share her secrets. Whenever asked, Meng Yao would shyly respond that Gu Nanzhou was won over by her kindness, because everyone believes Meng Yao has married into a wealthy family. Classmates who never used to contact her suddenly became her close friends. The once dead class group chat is now filled with people fawning over her every day. Flattered by all the praise, Meng Yao's vanity began to soar, and she would flaunt her wealth in front of me every time she showed off. She would either send me photos of her candlelit dinners with Gu Nanzhou or the jewelry he gifted her. In response, I would thoughtfully forward her an article titled, "The Marriage Alliance Between the Song and Gu Families. A Match Made in Heaven for the Prince and Princess." Meng Yao mocked me for being a low-level worker for life, and I didn't hold back, retorting that she was a shining little mistress. Although it seemed like we went back and forth in every fight, my combat power was clearly a bit higher. Each time, Meng Yao would be utterly defeated for a while, but Meng Yao's persona as a wealthy lady only lasted for 2 months. In the blink of an eye, the official announcement of the marriage alliance between the Gu and Song families was made. I had heard about this matter shortly after joining the Song Corporation. Although Gu Nanzhou had stirred up this messy affair with a little lover, the cooperation between the two families had started long ago. This marriage alliance involved tens of billions in project collaborations between the two families, and it couldn't be affected by a mere mistress. So, from the moment Meng Yao actively sought out Gu Nanzhou in this lifetime, she was destined to remain just a mistress. After all, in her previous life, she was pursued with a chasing wife to the crematorium intensity, but in this life, she was the one eagerly attaching herself to him. The news of Gu Nanzhou and Song Xiaoxiao's marriage spread like wildfire online. Before Meng Yao could stir up any trouble, our class group chat exploded first. Previously, when Meng Yao flaunted her wealthy lifestyle on social media, she was utterly brazen, blatantly revealing Gu Nanzhou's photos and identity. Afraid that others wouldn't know, now, with Gu Nanzhou's marriage announcement, almost all her former friends knew about her status as a mistress. The group chat is buzzing with excitement. Almost everyone is discussing Meng Yao. Oh my god, I used to think Meng Yao was so amazing, marrying a tall, rich, and handsome husband, but it turns out she was rushing to be someone's mistress. Exactly, didn't she always portray herself as a kind and saintly figure in class? Oh my god, don't insult saints. Do saints nowadays have the side gig of stealing other people's husbands? What? Saint, she used to post about charity events all the time, but now that she's latched onto a rich guy, where are the charity posts? It's all about flaunting wealth. Originally, everyone's flattery towards Meng Yao wasn't sincere. They all had ulterior motives like job hunting or borrowing money, but every time Meng Yao heard these requests, she would revert to her previous saintly demeanor. Although I married into a wealthy family, wouldn't helping you find a job be taking opportunities away from others, and all my money is meant to be donated to charity, so I can't lend it to you. Every time she righteously rejects someone, she turns around and starts flaunting her wealth on social media. So now that the news is out, all those who used to fawn over her have started mocking her. The group chat was buzzing with messages, but Meng Yao was famously known for her kind and gentle persona, someone who never argued with others. Back in our school days, no matter what happened, she always maintained a calm and detached demeanor, then pushed me forward to argue on her behalf. So while I was scrolling through the class group messages, Meng Yao started frantically messaging me privately. Liang Qiao, hurry up and speak up for me. Are you dead or something? They're insulting me like this. Why aren't you saying anything? Watching her desperately bombard my WeChat, I sneered and hung up her call. I was never her on-call tool to be summoned at will, and her retribution was only just beginning. Seeing that I ignored her, Meng Yao initially tried to explain herself pitifully in the group chat, but later, unable to bear the mockery, she directly engaged in a heated argument with them in the group. The one who isn't loved is the mistress. Nanzhou loves me. Song Xiaoxiao is the mistress. You're just jealous of me. That's why you say these things. You're all jealous that Nanzhou chose me, not any of you. Meng Yao's explosive remarks instantly sparked outrage in the group, and a fierce argument erupted. It only calmed down after she angrily left the group chat in a fit of rage. 7. Ever since the news of the marriage alliance between the Song and Gu families was announced, Meng Yao's life hasn't been as smooth as before. Her reputation in the Gu family was already tarnished, and now the wealthy socialite persona she had painstakingly built has completely collapsed. In addition, Meng Yao's remarks in the class group chat and some photos from her social media moments were reposted on social media platforms. This incident sparked considerable controversy online, and in the end, the Gu family spent a large sum of money to suppress the matter. After seeing that she had messed things up, Meng Yao immediately turned to me to seek reconciliation. I read all her messages but chose not to reply. However, I clearly underestimated her level of shamelessness. Meng Yao directly showed up at my doorstep one evening, acting as if nothing had happened. Her eyes were swollen and red, with dark circles underneath. Apart from her slightly protruding belly, she really didn't look like a pregnant woman. As soon as she entered my home, she sat on the sofa and started crying. Qiao Qiao, Nanzhou's mother offered me a check to leave him. She also told me to recognize my place, saying that even if I gave birth to the child, I could only be a mistress by Nanzhou's side. Meng Yao cried pitifully, pouring out all the grievances she had endured during this period to me in detail. In her account, during this period, the company faced numerous issues due to the dissatisfaction of the Song family over the scandal involving her and Gu Nanzhou. Now, not only has Gu Nanzhou lost his previous meticulous care for her, but his mother even went to the company and slapped her over this matter, demanding she leave her son. All the employees at Gu Corporation looked down on her, privately mocking her behind her back as a mistress who climbed her way up. She cried with grievance and resentment, completely oblivious to the murderous look in my eyes. In my previous life, when Meng Yao appeared with her son, Gu Nanzhou's mother held her hand and declared her the destined daughter-in-law of the Gu family, and the entire company was abuzz with rumors of the romantic love story between President Gu and her. Now, without the blood and flesh of me and Song Zhaozhao nourishing it, her love with Gu Nanzhou turns out to be so fragile. I originally intended to kick Meng Yao out directly, but seeing her cry so hysterically, I instantly changed my mind. In this life, I want to watch how Meng Yao step by step receives the retribution she deserves. Pretending to forgive her, I asked sympathetically, "Did President Gu not speak up for you?" As soon as Meng Yao heard me mention Gu Nanzhou, she covered her face and cried even more pitifully. Nanzhou sided with his mother and even told me not to be so sensitive. I've endured so much gossip and slander for him. Yet he wouldn't even give up a multi-billion-dollar project for me. She was genuinely heartbroken, but the moment I heard that, my brain short-circuited for a second. Does Meng Yao even have any idea how much profit this project brings, or the salaries and bonuses of the employees? Honestly, her brain isn't much better than a pig's. I sneered inwardly but still pretended to be concerned, my voice tinged with surprise. Oh my God, Yao Yao, President Gu is really going too far. But since Madame Gu has said that, you're not still planning to stay by President Gu's side as his mistress, are you? After saying that, I deliberately gave her a sidelong glance. Looking her up and down, Meng Yao seemed to have her defenses shattered by my gaze. Her face turned pale, and she hastily jumped up to retort, "What nonsense are you talking? How could I possibly do such a thing? Ever since I was little, wherever I go, people praise me for being kind-hearted and good-natured. I can even forgive the girls who bullied me. We grew up together. Haven't you heard what others say about me? And it's precisely because of my kindness that Nanzhou fell in love with me. Someone like me, how could I ever interfere in someone else's marriage?" As she spoke, Meng Yao proudly straightened her back, her face filled with reminiscence of the praises she had received over the years. Looking at her proud demeanor, I forced back my disgust and smiled encouragingly. "Yao Yao, I knew you weren't that kind of person. Even if President Gu and Miss Song are getting married in 2 months, I'm sure you can raise the child in your belly all by yourself. After all, you're not the kind of woman who uses a child to climb the social ladder." Before I could finish speaking, Meng Yao's originally smug face instantly turned deathly pale. It seemed she had genuinely never considered that Gu Nanzhou and Song Zhaozhao would actually get married. Now, hearing the specific wedding date, she let out a sharp scream. "What did you say?" I showed her the chat history on my phone, which was filled with internal messages from the Song family. I tried to suppress the glee in my tone. "Yao Yao, you didn't know. The Song family's eldest daughter and President Gu are getting married within the next 2 months. I heard both families want them to have a boy as soon as possible." "No, that's impossible." Meng Yao's face turned ashen with horror, and she scrambled to leave in a panic. I have something to do. I need to go." But how could I let her go at this moment? I hurriedly stopped Meng Yao, speaking in a tone that said, "I understand you, Yao Yao. I know you have the strongest sense of morality and would never interfere in someone else's marriage. Stay at my place tonight, and in a few days, you can look for a place to live and a job." The smile Meng Yao forced onto her face was uglier than a frown. Pulled by me, she was caught in a dilemma, her eyes filled with anxiety, but she gritted her teeth and stayed. However, that very night, before I could even fall asleep, she left a letter and sneaked away. In the letter, she specifically defended herself, saying she couldn't bear to see Gu Nanzhou marry a woman he didn't love, nor could she allow the Song family to use their power to separate the two lovers. She was going back now to save Gu Nanzhou. I read the letter she left as if it were a joke, and then I started preparing to move to a new home. 8. This period was a critical time for the collaboration project between the Gu and Song corporations. Working alongside Song Zhaozhao, I had endless tasks to handle every day. This time, Meng Yao clearly learned her lesson after returning. She no longer posted about luxury goods to show off every day, but instead shared photos of herself with the circle of wealthy socialites. Although there were still many sarcastic comments about her on social media, Meng Yao completely abandoned her previous persona and started clapping back at them in the comments. "You're just jealous of me. Only people like you who are poor and useless would criticize me. The wealthy ladies in the socialite circle are all polite and respectful to me. Now I'm in the same circle as them. Even if you work hard for another 20 years, you still won't be able to reach this level. It was as if she had been brainwashed by the socialite circle. Every day, she talked about nothing but the socialite circle, according to her. Only by integrating into the upper-class circle could she truly be worthy of Gu Nanzhou. When her vanity wasn't satisfied on social media, she kept bothering me, but I was too busy with overtime work to pay her any attention. This project was crucial for both companies. In my previous life, the Gu family soared to success thanks to this project, but Meng Yao clearly didn't want to give her dear husband this opportunity. 3 months into the collaboration between the two companies, something suddenly went wrong. The project's core files were leaked, and all work was urgently halted. I was also the first to know who the culprit was, receiving Meng Yao's message just as the police began investigating both companies. Qiao Qiao, please save me. If you just step forward and admit that you were the one who leaked the project, I promise I won't treat you poorly in the future. It seemed she finally realized she was in trouble and started bombarding me with frantic WeChat messages. But before I could even report her, Meng Yao was arrested by the police. The surveillance footage clearly showed Meng Yao stealing documents from the CEO's office. She didn't even bother to hide it from others. When the police were about to arrest her, she tearfully admitted that it was Mrs. Liu from the social circle who had asked her to do it. Mrs. Liu had cried to her about problems with her own project, and Meng Yao thought she was doing a good deed by showing her the files. I heard from former colleagues that when Meng Yao said those words back then, even the police were shocked. They had never seen such a bizarre motive for a crime. In all their years, Gu Nanzhou immediately stepped forward and slapped Meng Yao hard across the face. His expression frenzied as he cursed her to die, completely losing the arrogant, domineering CEO demeanor he had before. Upon learning the reason for the document leak, Song Zhaozhao seemed to finally see Gu Nanzhou for who he truly was. She publicly announced to the media that she was severing all ties with the Gu family and terminated all previous collaborations. At the same time, all the previous scandals involving Gu Nanzhou and Meng Yao resurfaced online. Almost everyone now knew that the Gu family's young master was living off his fiancée's wealth while having an affair, and had now let his mistress ruin a major project between the two families. Now the entire Gu group is facing a boycott. The company was already short on funds, and with the Song group withdrawing its investment, all of the company's projects have ground to a halt. However, Gu Nanzhou still seems to be as delusional as ever. After the Song group announced the broken engagement, he called to arrogantly shout at Song Zhaozhao, telling her not to regret it, and that even if she begged on her knees in the future, he would never give her the title of Mrs. Gu again. Ever since I started working at the Song group, I have been by Song Zhaozhao's side, so when Gu Nanzhou's confident and haughty voice came through the phone, my second-hand embarrassment instantly flared up, especially seeing the utterly mortified expression on Song Zhaozhao's face. She probably thinks the only stain on her life now is having dated Gu Nanzhou. But not long after Gu Nanzhou made those harsh threats, he started harassing her again. Song Zhaozhao, I know you must regret it now and want my forgiveness. If you come begging me with those projects and funds from the Song family, I might still consider giving you the title of fiancé. I've told Manager Li that the Song family will cover the final payment for the West City project funds. Consider it a chance for you to atone for your mistakes. Song Zhaozhao, why hasn't the money for the West City project and my Gu family's funds been transferred yet? Stop playing these little games of playing hard to get. He sent dozens of emails like this in a row, and I was completely numb reading them. Actually, Gu Nanzhou showed up at my door just 1 week after the engagement was called off, with a look that said, "Woman, even if you regret it now, I'm going to make you regret it." He came asking for a handout. As expected, Song Zhaozhao immediately called security to kick him out of the Song Corporation. But before things could settle down for a few days, seeing the company falling into chaos, Gu Nanzhou started harassing her again. After being blocked on the phone, he frantically sent work emails. Besides, he also used the Song Corporation's name to do business outside, proudly telling others to collect money from the Song Corporation, only to be slapped in the face and then come back barking in frustration. And Meng Yao, true to being his wife, after she stole the documents, Gu's mother directly went to beat her up, and Gu Nanzhou hated her to the bone. if it weren't for the fact that she was still pregnant, he might have handed her over to the police. So now, seeing that no one would help her, she tearfully contacted me again. Xiao Xiao, how could the Gu family treat me like this? I'm still carrying their precious son. I just took a project file. What's the big deal? Song Zhao Zhao must be jealous of me. That's why she's treating the Gu Corporation this way. Xiao Xiao, you're working at the Song Corporation now, right? Can you secretly transfer tens of millions in funds to the Gu Corporation? Song Zhao Zhao and I always share these digital side dishes with each other, and then sign a mutual non-mockery treaty. 9. However, such peaceful and stable days only lasted for a few months. One day, Song Zhao Zhao gossiped to me that the Gu family was about to go bankrupt. At first, I was quite shocked, marveling at how fast it all happened. Song Zhao Zhao grinned from ear to ear, passionately telling me the whole story. Ever since the Song family recently announced a new marriage alliance, the Gu family's stocks plummeted. Originally, the Gu family wouldn't have gone bankrupt so quickly, but Meng Yao, in a bid to show kindness, donated all the liquid funds from Gu Nanzhou's account in one go, causing the company to collapse instantly. Listening to Song Zhao Zhao's words, aside from the thrill of vengeance deep in my heart, I also felt an inexplicable worry. But the truth was, my worries were justified, because just a few days later, my mom messaged me saying Meng Yao's mother came to ask for the address of my new rental place. In my previous life, after the news of me raising a child spread back home, everyone gossiped about my parents. Meng Yao's mother openly mocked me in front of the neighbors, saying I had a child out of wedlock and didn't know how to behave properly, unlike her daughter Meng Yao, who was still studying abroad. Now that the truth is out, she doesn't blame her daughter for being improper, but instead comes looking for me first. After hearing the news, I only told my mom not to say anything to Meng Yao's family, and then quickly moved again. But as I expected, just a few days later, I saw Meng Yao, whom I hadn't seen in a long time, at my new doorstep. The moment I saw her, I wondered if I was a pathetic person. Why was Meng Yao still targeting only me? Even now, she was holding a thin, small child in her arms, looking much thinner herself, with a sallow complexion, nothing like a woman in her early 20s. Had heard from Song Zhao Zhao earlier that after donating the money, Meng Yao was beaten by Gu Nanzhou and sent to the hospital, where she gave birth prematurely. After giving birth, the Gu family wanted to abandon her, but Meng Yao fled the hospital with the child. Meng Yao stood at my doorstep, and as soon as she saw me, she rushed forward to grab my hand, crying uncontrollably, "Xiao Xiao, please help me. I know you will definitely help me. I just donated a few million, and Gu Nanzhou beat me." It was clearly his incompetence that caused the company to go bankrupt, and now Gu Nanzhou has kicked me out of the Gu family. "Xiao Xiao, it was you who told me to keep the child back then. You're his godmother. You can't just abandon him," she cried with such grievance, completely oblivious to my icy, frosty expression. I moved as soon as I heard she was looking for me, and this time I didn't tell anyone about the move. I have no idea how long Meng Yao has been waiting outside the Song family's gate just to find me. Meng Yao tearfully recounted everything that had happened during this time. Only after calming down did she lift her eyes to take in my new home. "Liang Qiao, how can a rundown old place like this possibly take good care of me and my son?" After saying that, Meng Yao shoved the luggage behind her into my hands and barged into the room, her mouth full of complaints. Speechless, I stopped her at the door and said coldly, "I'm not your mother. Why should I take care of you and your son?" Meng Yao seemed never to have imagined I would refuse to help her. She froze for a moment, then immediately started shouting reproachfully, "You were the one who talked me into keeping this child. You have an obligation to look after the two of us. I even have a child with me. Aren't you afraid something terrible will happen?" After saying such vicious things, before she could finish speaking, I shut the door right in her face. "Liang Qiao, open the door for me. I knew you were always jealous of me, just like those women at the company, jealous that Gu Nanzhou fell in love with me and not you. Open the door for me." Outside the door, the sound of Meng Yao banging on it and her curses kept coming, but I closed the door tightly and ignored her inside the room. Meng Yao made a scene outside the door for a long time before being scolded away by the neighbor. 9. I originally thought that after this big scene, Meng Yao should have understood my attitude, but I clearly underestimated her bottom line. That day, I had just gotten off work and returned home. Standing at the door, I could hear the sharp, piercing cries of a child coming from inside the house. Before I could even react, I realized the lock on the main door had been removed. With just a gentle push, the door swung open. I took a deep breath and walked inside, only to find the child alone in the bedroom. The thin, small child lay on the bed wailing loudly. The diaper they were wearing was swollen and had leaked, mixing feces and urine onto the bedsheet. This residential complex is old, run down, and small, with poor security and surveillance. So, right after moving in, I installed a surveillance camera at the entrance. On the surveillance footage, Meng Yao was bundled up tightly. She had called a locksmith to remove the lock before I got off work, then entered the house directly, left the child, and walked away. She even thoughtfully left a note, and the words on it were exactly the same as in my previous life. Liang Qiao, as a single mother, I simply can't take good care of the child alone. Your boyfriend surely won't mind you bringing a child along. Don't you dare contact my parents. They're old and can't handle the shock. If you take good care of my son, I won't hold your past actions against you. The letter was long. Meng Yao detailed that her son drinks formula costing over 5,000 yuan per can, and that his diapers and daily necessities are also high-end brand name products, urging me to prepare them quickly. To be honest, when I read Meng Yao's final line about starting a new life abroad, I was so angry I laughed. Sure enough, it's always the scoundrels who live the most carefree lives in this world. I watched the child crying hoarsely on the bed with a cold gaze, simultaneously ordering formula and diapers on my phone app and calling the police. In my past life, I pitied a child harmed by their parents' mistakes, but in this life, I only believe that genetics are something that can be inherited. He inherited the selfish genes of Gu Nanzhou and Meng Yao. That is unchangeable. The police arrived at my home in less than half an hour. I showed her the video from the doorway but deliberately omitted any information about Meng Yao. After understanding the situation, the police took the child back to the station. That very night, Meng Yao started bombarding me with calls from other people's phones. She screamed at me over the phone. Liang Qiao, you bitch, how dare you hand my son over to the police? Get to the police station right now and bail me out. I had already guessed that Meng Yao wouldn't just abandon the child and run off without a care. After all, Gu Nanzhou was the best man she could ever hope to latch onto in this lifetime. Even if she wanted to run, she would need to settle the child properly first. If my guess is correct, Meng Yao must have been keeping watch nearby after she left the child. When she saw the police taking the child to the welfare institution, she probably couldn't sit still any longer and would have stepped forward to demand the child back. However, breaking into someone's home to abandon a child is illegal, and she would be detained the moment she stepped into the police station. Hurry up and get over here. If anything happens to my son at the welfare institution, I will never let you off the hook. Meng Yao was crying and shouting over the phone. Completely devoid of the kind, gentle angelic image she once had, I hung up the phone in a good mood and immediately started searching for new rental listings on the platform. Meng Yao's current fate is exactly the retribution she deserves, but I truly don't want to have any further involvement with her. 10. The day the Gu family went bankrupt happened to be the day of Song Zhaozhao's engagement, and I was invited to attend. The engagement ceremony was going smoothly at first, but for some reason, halfway through, Gu Nanzhou suddenly rushed out from the crowd, followed closely by Meng Yao, who hadn't been seen for a long time and was holding a child. Everyone was stunned, and the security guards at the entrance were the first to react. Stepping forward to restrain them, Gu Nanzhou exuded an aura of humiliation, his face livid as he cursed at the security guards. Who do you think you are, daring to lay a hand on me? But with his wrinkled suit, disheveled hair, and unshaven face, even the security guards could tell he was definitely not a guest at this banquet. They promptly and decisively threw him to the ground, making him eat dirt. Gu Nanzhou lay on the ground in a pathetic state, shouting and screaming, teetering on the brink of a complete breakdown. In the end, the Song family parents, being decent people, still remembered their past ties and courteously helped Gu Nanzhou up and seated him. Even though the Gu family was now bankrupt, Nanzhou, you should have given us a heads up before coming, would have arranged for someone to attend to you. Hearing this, Gu Nanzhou's gloomy face instantly lit up with smugness, and he pointed at the two security guards, cursing them loudly. You two snobbish lowlifes, even the Song family is still trying to curry favor with me. If you don't kneel down and apologize properly today, this matter is far from over, as soon as these words were spoken. Not only were the Song family parents and the security guards stunned, but all the guests at the entire banquet fell into a collective silence. Song Zhaozhao clearly noticed the commotion as well, put down her wine glass, and hurried over. Gu Nanzhou saw the person and curled his lips into a smile that was 2 parts sarcasm, 3 parts wicked charm, and 5 parts smugness, directly blocking her path. Song Zhaozhao, I still want to give you one last chance. If you help me repay all my debts, I'll let you be the mother of my child. After saying this, he deliberately pointed at the child in Meng Yao's arms. Meng Yao was holding the child in her arms. Looking terribly thin, though she remained silent, the venom in her eyes was clearly visible. Song Zhaozhao rolled her eyes dramatically and immediately had security escort the 2 of them out. Unexpectedly, in the next second, Gu Nanzhou's expression changed drastically. The disdain and smugness in his eyes instantly turned into fawning, as if he had seen a lifeline when he looked at Song Zhaozhao. His gaze filled with a kind of crazed obsession. I don't want this child anymore, just help me pay off that money, and I'll be with you. I don't want this woman or that child anymore. Didn't you always insist on being with me before? I'll grant your wish right now. It was that bitch Meng Yao who seduced me back then. She deliberately seduced me and got pregnant. Give me another chance. I'll never do it again. The next second, Meng Yao, who had been silent the whole time, suddenly erupted. She violently shoved the child in her arms into Gu Nanzhou's embrace, her face contorted as she screamed incessantly, "You're lying. It was you were the one who raped me at the hotel back then. It was you even tricked me into having the child. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't be stuck with this burden at this age. I'm going to call the police on you, you rapist. And now you want to shake me off. Don't even think about it." Gu Nanzhou's eyes turned bloodshot, instantly ignited by her words. He immediately slapped Meng Yao. "Shut up, I raped you. I tricked you into having a child. It was you who shamelessly climbed into my bed back then, using the child to control me. You're just a gold-digging bitch pretending to be kind and innocent." The 2 of them ended up brawling right there, with the poor child caught in the middle, wailing in terror. In the end, it took several security guards to pull them apart, and the police were called immediately. By the time the police arrived, Meng Yao's face was completely swollen from the beating. She sat there with disheveled hair, looking like a lifeless puppet. Coincidentally, I was passing by just as the engagement party ended, and I saw the police escorting the 2 of them toward the patrol car. Meng Yao saw me and froze for a few seconds. The next moment, her previously dead eyes suddenly twisted with ferocity, with venomous rage. She tried to break free from the officers and charge at me. "Liang Qiao, you're the one who did this to me. You're the one who made me have this child. It's all you. If it weren't for you, I would never have ended up like this." She cried, made a scene, and threw a tantrum, acting like a complete lunatic out of control. I just stood far away, but in my mind, I kept reliving the horrific scene of my previous life where I was killed by a car. It was a long time after the incident that I finally heard about what happened to Meng Yao and Gu Nanzhou. Gu Nanzhou was directly sentenced to prison due to debt issues from his previous company. After Meng Yao was released from the police station that time, she took the child home. However, the baby was premature and in poor health, and shockingly, their family actually started considering abandoning the child again. But nowadays, surveillance cameras are installed everywhere in the city. A simple check would easily expose them. After being warned by the police, they quieted down considerably. But later, for some unknown reason, Meng Yao went mad all day long. She would either run around the neighborhood like a madwoman, muttering the names of Gu Nanzhou and me, or throw tantrums and smash things at home. In the end, her parents couldn't take it anymore, so they sold the house and moved the whole family away. My mom heard about these things from our old neighbors, sighing as she spoke about how Meng Yao, the little girl I grew up with, had turned out like this. I comforted my mom, telling her not to overthink it. Everything is a matter of one's own choices. Story 2. The werewolf I raised actually talked back to me over some bastard child. I coldly lashed him 88 times with my whip. The barrage of hate comments nearly flooded the screen with 99+ messages. "Oh my god, is this jealous bitch completely insane? She actually went for the kill. What's the difference between treating the male lead like a dog? This is downright abuse." No wonder he chose to save his illegitimate daughter over you. If it weren't for her domineering attitude and constant threats, the male lead would have left her side long ago. Me, threatening a disloyal dog. After a long silence, I scoffed and had all his belongings thrown out. He immediately picked out a new wolf cub from the gladiator pits. Half a month later, he came rushing through the rain upon hearing the news from his bastard daughter. Gripping my arm desperately with red-rimmed eyes, he asked in a trembling voice, "Did you really take in a new beast, man?" When I dragged that blood-soaked wolf cub back home, the villa was deathly silent. No one expected that after my threats the previous day, I'd actually bring home a new orc today. The butler caught the nearly dropped vase with trembling hands, then steeled himself to ask where the newcomer should be housed. I shot him a sidelong glance and retorted, "Where do you think? Orcs require personal training, so the quarters will be adjacent to mine." He tentatively asked, "What about the things in that room?" I said coldly, "Discard them, now everyone knows." The orc I'd raised for a decade dared to talk back to me over some bastard girl, then swam the opposite direction without hesitation when we both fell into the water. Last night I held back my rage and lashed him 88 times with the whip, yet even when the whip was soaked with blood, he remained stone-faced and silent, drenched and shivering. My palms burned with stinging pain. The final lash came down with brutal force, sending a spray of blood from his mouth. I barked sharply, "Speak." He finally raised his head, eyes devoid of emotion. "What would you have me say, my lady? What is it you wish to hear?" Knowing full well I was furious, he deliberately provoked me with relentless retorts. "You bought my life, shattered and mended my bones, carved every rule into my flesh. What now? The wolf you trained with your own hands won't heal. Does that wound your pride? How ridiculous, after all my careful mentoring." He chose to save that little white lotus who's after my inheritance. When we fell into the water, the endless night stretched like spilled ink in the distance. He smirked, "The young mistress has plenty of admirers anyway. One less won't matter, one less won't matter." I scoffed as if hearing a joke. "Cain, don't forget why I keep you around." His gaze mocked, spine rigid with arrogance. I could never decipher the young mistress's whims. All I saw was the young mistress on her pedestal, worshipped like the moon among stars. Countless hands reached for you from shore. Yet behind her, nothing but emptiness. Perhaps the young mistress has never known the desperation of clutching at straws while drowning, but I have. In that moment, I was the only one who truly saw her. The evening chill seeped deep into my bones. I curled my lips in a sardonic smile. "So what?" His gaze turned icy, each word deliberate. "She has no one but me, just you." The absurdity kept swelling before my eyes. Not a flicker of retreat showed in his gaze during the 30-second standoff. I scoffed and worked my jaw. "Wanna be her lapdog? Fine, I'll escort you there myself." A werewolf's pride and ferocity would never tolerate being called a dog, yet I chose to humiliate him precisely this way. I drove through the night to drop him off at Luna's rented apartment. When I kicked him out, he merely furrowed his brows slightly. Then, gritting through his bleeding back wound, he slowly stood up and limped toward the illuminated villa. His receding figure stood proud and unyielding, refusing to bow. Once bitten, twice shy. Nobody expected me to adopt another wolf cub. The underground beast arena owner initially recommended dozens of different beast folk species to me, but after circling the place multiple times, I just couldn't find a single one that caught my eye. A sense of unease settled over me as I decided to leave. Just as I rounded the corner, about to step out of the corridor, a blood-stained hand reached out from a cage in the corner, clutching my boot. I tilted my head, gaze dropping downward. I've witnessed countless beasts teetering on death's edge. Most would turn hysterical, numb with madness, or beg pathetically for mercy. Yet against all expectations, amidst the grimy bloodstains and chilling play of light, I saw a pair of stubborn yet luminous dark eyes. He said he'd willingly be my dog, as long as I gave him a bite to eat. I glanced at the cage's label, "Defective Goods." The babbling boss broke into a cold sweat the moment he saw it. A flick of my wrist intercepted the boss's attempt to intervene, peeling off the black leather gloves. I slowly crouched down, in the underground fighting pit that perpetually reeked of rust and decay. A single beam of light fell precisely on my fingertips. I tilted his chin up and studied him intently. Had he witnessed my entire selection process, he'd know exactly how exacting my standards are. Now he's clinging to life by a thread, teetering on the brink of death. His heartbeat grew unsteady in his chest at that moment. He could hear every single one of his own breaths. Those 3 minutes of scrutiny felt like an eternity, yet he detected no change in my expressionless face. Just as the light in his dark eyes was fading, I arched an eyebrow suddenly. Care to come with me? His drooping wolf ears shot upright. He wagged his lupin tail frantically like an eager dog, pupils burning with fiery intensity, rubbing against my wrist. They fervently repeated, "I will follow me, will be my dog, will stay loyal forever, will never betray me." Good, just what I wanted to hear. I glanced at the trembling shop owner and said flatly, "I'll take this one." 3. I never intended to keep this wolf cub, just a defective product after all. It could never withstand my grueling training regimen. When his wounds had mostly healed, I told him, "You can leave now." He stood frozen for a long moment before asking, "Why?" His dark, glistening eyes held unspoken emotions as he stared at me without blinking. Flipping the newspaper casually, I said, "No reason. Consider it an act of charity." The butler pulled him aside and whispered, "Sigh, our young mistress only wants the strongest and most loyal beast folk. Don't even think about it. Your predecessor was sent away overnight for disloyalty. He'd served our mistress for 10 years, yet she showed no mercy." The butler was still rambling when suddenly the space beside him became empty. The young beast man left only to return again, with a slightly hoarse voice still carrying traces of ragged breath. He asked, "May I have a chance to prove myself better than him?" I barely lifted my eyelids. "In what regard?" He clenched his fingers and enunciated deliberately, "In every regard, be it strength or loyalty, he would surpass even that senior the butler spoke of." I set down the newspaper and studied him with leisurely composure. In the spacious, well-lit living room, he waited nervously for my verdict, fidgeting with apprehension. When I brought him home that day, I hadn't paid much attention to his appearance. Now that he's cleaned up, I can see every sharp angle of his features radiates aggression, his prominent brow bones and razor-sharp eye corners, yet the ferocity was softened by his damp eyelashes at this moment. Those stubbornly bright black eyes remained exactly as I remembered from that day. "That's exactly why I took him away." After a long silence, I finally spoke. "Agreed, if you can handle it. For my training methods are notorious for their brutality. None of the previous adoptees, 01 through 05, survived this period, and he was the 7th. Names were always just labels, beyond bearing my surname." Eldar held no special meaning, yet he nodded with solemn sincerity. I didn't expect to go full throttle right from the start, yet his potential far exceeded anything I'd imagined. In just 1 week, he completed all basic training and voluntarily requested more challenging drills. It made me wonder if the defective product label had been misplaced all along. At dusk, he had just completed a 100-kilogram weighted mountain cross-country run. His calf muscles were twitching uncontrollably, forcing him to brace his hands on his knees to keep from collapsing. 100 kilometers in 6 hours, maintaining shooting precision even as his muscles tore. He nailed it on his 3rd attempt, leaning one arm on the Jeep's window frame. I absently chatted on the phone while my gaze remained fixed on his retreating figure. Suddenly, as if sensing something, he turned around. Our eyes met across the distance, backlit by the setting sun. He came running down the slope toward me, the damp black hair clinging to his forehead lifted in the mountain breeze as we drew closer, until I could see the flushed skin of his neck and the trembling bead of sweat clinging to his throat. It was Father calling, summoning me to the banquet. He said all would be forgiven for what I'd done to his bastard daughter. If only I'd swallow my pride. How laughable that this ruthless man from my youth now genuinely clings to familial sentiment in his old age. I mumbled a few half-hearted responses before hanging up. "Young mistress," he said, steadying his breath as he stopped before me, watching his heaving chest. It suddenly struck me that every evening he'd come panting like this to see me. Even today, when his body had clearly reached its limit, I chided half-heartedly, "No need to rush like that. Didn't want you to get bored waiting too long." My key-turning hand paused uncharacteristically. Shooting him a glance, I said flatly, "Get in. Came here specifically for you." Boredom doesn't even factor in. After fastening the seatbelt, he tilted his head, Adam's apple bobbing slightly, before finally uttering the words he'd been holding back. "It only took 6 hours today. The bullet didn't miss its mark either. No need for him to report specifically to me. These data have been officially documented by dedicated personnel. Both physical fitness and reaction speed are truly world-class. Remember, Kane's personal best back then was only 7 hours and 3 minutes. Yet he completely shattered that record in just 1 week, the barrage. Comments are currently in a heated argument. No way there's an orc stronger than the main cast. Who the hell is this? Isn't this just copying our Werewolf ML's character design? Someone needs to step in and fix this. Chill out, y'all forgetting this is a harem novel. Stronger orcs appearing is totally normal. Why the surprise? They'll all end up simping for our FL queen anyway. Exactly. Who wouldn't love our sweet, adorable, and compliment savory FL, once our wolf boy sees through that toxic woman's true colors, he'll definitely come running to our FL's arms. Oh my god, I really wish our female lead was here. The little werewolf is clearly fishing for compliments, working so hard and finally gathering the courage to ask for praise, only to get a few icy humps in return. My heart absolutely breaks for him. I've learned to tune out these idiotic barrage comments by now, but that last floating comment actually gave me rare pause for thought. Seeking praise. 5. The car entered the city as the sunset glow bathed the congested vehicles on the overpass. I couldn't help stealing glances at the person in the passenger seat. Their ears seemed slightly drooped, lips pressed tightly together, now with lowered eyelids. They stared blankly at the bloodstains on their clothes. Lost in thought, I rehearsed the words in my mind several times before finally calling out to him. The young orc looked up, his thick lashes fluttering slightly, half his body bathed in the sunset glow that unexpectedly softened his usual fierce demeanor. Damn it, the words were right on the tip of my tongue, yet I still couldn't bring myself to say them. My words caught in my throat, hesitating between speech and silence. Take tomorrow off, I finally murmured, gripping the steering wheel tighter. Not exactly praise, but at least there was some concern. He probably won't feel too disappointed now. Yet after a brief pause, he insisted. I'm fine, I can keep training. I turned my head, my gaze dropping to his blood-stained calf. No need for rest. I frowned slightly. The barrage comments answered my question. He probably thinks he didn't do well enough today to meet his master's expectations. Poor little werewolf, where are you, sweet protagonist? This vile villain is crushing all his self-confidence. Sigh, he's terrified of being abandoned for not being good enough. That's why he's desperately trying to prove himself. Too bad he ran into this heartless villain instead of the heroine. She'd have been showering him with praise by now. Hey, let's be fair here. The heroine has an abundance of love to give, but someone like the villainess who's never experienced love as a child would naturally struggle to show affection as an adult. I actually kind of get where she's coming from, defending that toxic witch. Hard pass. Her twisted personality is her own problem. What did our poor werewolf ever do to deserve this? The barrage of comments grew increasingly heated. I turned a blind eye, my gaze fixed on Eldar's face. The dying sunlight cast across half his face, making the bloodstains on his neck glow with an eerie allure. The sunset clouds unfurled across the horizon like spilled ink, their dazzling hues nearly overwhelming to behold. The prolonged gaze made his knuckles curl tight, his heartbeat pounding louder with each passing second. He couldn't bear the weight of that scrutinizing stare. His ears burned crimson as his eyes involuntarily dropped, just as he flinched to turn away. Desperate to escape my line of sight, I suddenly spoke up. You did great today. His turning motion froze for a split second. I added, so you can take tomorrow off as a reward. The congested overpass finally began moving. Not everyone is born knowing how to love, but I don't mind learning a little more, especially when it comes to this little wolf pup I'm raising with my own hands. 6. The banquet. A week later, I arrived as promised. This was the day the father would formally acknowledge his illegitimate daughter before the public. The girl stood timidly under the dazzling spotlight in her elaborate, expensive gown, the center of everyone's attention. Kane stood protectively behind her, his arrogant gaze surveying the room. Their eyes met across the distance. His eyes were icy cold. I looked away, only to meet a gaze that appeared innocent yet carried a subtle challenge. Her eyes seemed to say, "See, the werewolf, father." Everyone stands with me. The barrage of comments erupted in cheers. No wonder he's like a whole new person after escaping that toxic witch. Without our sweet, healing heroine, who knows how miserable the poor male lead would be. That vile woman must be fuming. 999 blessings to the couple. Nobody gets to tear them apart. Just look at her face. She's clearly on the verge of going full dark side. LOL. I scoffed. Thanks, but I've long since embraced the darkness, to a degree that makes everyone wary of me, especially my father. To him, I'm a cold-blooded, ruthless monster. The kind of offspring who'd scatter his ashes without a second thought. The real kicker: I discovered Luna and his other loved children before he did. This is the smoking gun evidence of his infidelity. With his devoted husband persona on the verge of collapse, he had to launch damage control by bringing back the most naive and obedient Luna, claiming it was a youthful mistake. He expressed deep remorse and vowed to make amends. As a bonus, he managed to shift the blame onto me. If I openly showed hostility toward Luna, I'd be labeled as petty, inconsiderate of my father's feelings, and heartless. He thought his provoking phone call would make my pride prevent me from attending this banquet. Yet here I am, standing calmly before him, even smiling as I addressed that illegitimate daughter with little sister. The crowd below buzzed with whispers. Wasn't Voss known to adore his wife? After decades with just one precious daughter, how did this illegitimate child suddenly appear? Humph. What rich man doesn't keep mistresses? Who knows how many bastards he's got stashed away? Poor young mistress, having to hand over the beast man she raised for over a decade to some illegitimate sister. I'd be livid. What's there to sulk about for a disloyal dog? I glided effortlessly among the guests, exchanging pleasantries, paying compliments, and making toasts. That silent yet scorching gaze cut through the crowd, tracking my every move. I turned a blind eye. Before long, a sudden gale howled outside. The gloomy sky was split by lightning, thunder roaring deafeningly. I turned to see the werewolf enfolding Luna in his arms, tenderly covering her ears with dutiful care. Don't be afraid. Another thunderclap crashed through the air. I couldn't help but think of the little wolf pup back home. He seemed off after training today, almost unusually restless. Noticing my frown, Luna finally pretended to spot me and said timidly, "Why, your sister's beastkin after all. Shouldn't you be protecting her?" The werewolf replied coldly, "She doesn't need me." "But," she stammered, "sister seems upset now. It's my fault she left you behind. Why don't you go make amends with her first? I'll apologize too. I really don't want to come between you two because of me." He cut in sharply, "This isn't about you." Two pairs of eyes simultaneously turned toward me. I waited for what they'd say next. The werewolf stared bluntly and sneered, "Well, the high and mighty young mistress always has her reasons for everything, since it's her own choice. What more is there for me to say? It's my fault, Kane." Big Sis seems really angry now. "Maybe you should, for secure document anti-piracy, choose Little Tiger Bot, reliable, stable, and scam-free." Those two were performing a perfect duet over there. The butler suddenly rushed in, panting heavily. A bad premonition struck me. "What's wrong?" "Eldar's mating season has hit hard. The doctor says he's allergic to suppressants. He might die without proper care. Young mistress, you must come back immediately." My face darkened instantly as I turned to follow the butler out. Suddenly, an iron grip seized my arm. My steps were forcibly halted. I turned with icy composure. The werewolf's bloodshot eyes bore into me as it quavered, "You've taken in another beast folk." Luna stared at us nervously. I sneered and slapped him hard across the face. "Get back to your master." That slap was still too light. His grip on my arm tightened, his nails digging into my flesh. "Lilith, you swore I'd be your only beastkin. Why?" His eyes burned with unshed tears as he stared at me stubbornly. "How could you just replace me so easily?" I scoffed bitterly. "Kane, aren't you doing the same? Who was the first to find someone else anyway?" His voice cracked. "That night, you were the one who threw me away." I suddenly laughed and enunciated each word clearly. "Didn't I give you a choice?" After kicking him off that night, I stood there waiting for a full minute, a 60-second countdown. I gave him one last chance to admit his mistake, yet his receding figure stood proud, never looking back. Limping but determined, he pressed on toward Luna's rented room. My knuckles whitened around the steering wheel. After a long silence, I let out a derisive snort. A decade of training just raised someone else's obedient dog. Utterly preposterous. 3 seconds left. I averted my gaze with a frosty expression. The engine roared through the night. The instant he tilted his head slightly, I spun the wheel and sped away. It took some time getting back from the banquet hall. 7. Ignoring my soaked clothes, I headed straight upstairs after hearing the doctor's briefing. The moment I approached the door, the overwhelming metallic stench of blood assaulted my senses. Frowning, I pushed the door open. The young werewolf had already lost control. His ears and tail fully emerged as he trembled in a fetal position, muffled whimpers escaping the blanket cocoon. Werewolves have always possessed keen hearing. Those wolf ears trembled Violently as I approached, his knuckles turned white from gripping the blanket. When I couldn't pull the blanket away, I commanded, "Eldar, come out." His entire body was trembling, sweat dampened the fine hairs on the nape of his neck. "No, just leave me alone." The sweltering heat in the air grew more oppressive. "The desire is becoming unbearable. Eldar, do you have a death wish?" I lost patience, roughly ruffling his hair. My fingers trailed downward, brushing against his feverish, sweat-drenched gland through the blanket. His entire body shuddered, muscles tensing abruptly. The storm raged outside with howling winds and flashing lightning. In the dimly lit room, I was pinned against the wall by his unrestrained force. My reflection shimmered in his glazed, unfocused eyes as his flushed eyelids trembled slightly. He knew this was wrong, yet he couldn't resist the wolf's most primal, feral, and straightforward craving. The desperate need for comfort from his closest companion, the fluffy tip of his tail trembled uncontrollably, brushing against my calf in restless sweeps. An intense, scorching pheromone mixed with the metallic tang of unhealed wounds enveloped me, overpowering and inescapable. He fought desperately against the urge to press closer, settling only for burying his muzzle in the crook of my neck. The silver-furred ears twitched rhythmically in discomfort. The gland at the nape of his neck lay completely exposed within my view. The moment my fingertips grazed it, he shuddered as if electrified, a muffled whimper escaping his throat, somewhere between distress and gratification. "Relax." I stroked the nape of his neck. He nuzzled impatiently against my throat, pressing closer into me. I massaged the feverish skin at the back of his neck, feeling better now. Except for occasionally adjusting his posture during training sessions, he'll never have another moment this intimate with me. The closer that familiar, longed for warmth drew near, the more his desire for closeness burned within him. No good. Not good at all. With every movement of his palm, the feverish heat within him surged stronger, wanting to be held tighter, to bury my face deeper, to do something even more reckless. "It hurts," he murmured with trembling, flushed eyes, pushed to his limit yet only daring to nuzzle my neck with his wolf ears. "I need what?" I asked. He remained silent, his ragged breath scorching against my skin, nearly melting me with its heat. It rose slightly again and again, like a tentative probe or a pleading request, until a warm palm gently enclosed it. "Like this?" I asked. The pup's pheromones lacked the heavy intensity of a full-grown wolf. "Ate, like the crisp bitterness of pine needles snapping underfoot in a rain-soaked forest." He was excessively docile, yet painfully sensitive. Trembling lashes framed those glistening eyes that stared unblinking at me. The slightest movement could send waves of ragged breaths shuddering through his throat. In the latter half of the night, the storm subsided as the full moon's silhouette gradually emerged on the horizon. Moonlight filtered through the window screen, casting undulating patterns across the room. As the tide of passion ebbed away, he lay spent between my thighs, his body glistening with sweat. My fingers lingered on the scent gland at his nape while my gaze traced the scars marking his back. "This is from training. Haven't had time to treat it yet." Moonlight casts its glow right along the wound's edge. I gently touch it. "When it hurts, do you ever think about leaving this place?" His back gave a slight shudder, his groggy mind still foggy. Instinct drove his mumbled reply, "No." In the dead silence of deep night, he hauled his exhausted body upright, locking eyes with me. Her dewy, luminous eyes reflected both the moon and me. He said, "Eldar's loyalty to the young mistress is eternal." My heart quivered ever so slightly in that moment, fingertips tightened unconsciously. There's no such thing as eternal loyalty. Only temptations not strong enough to sway the heart. Just like that werewolf I raised for 10 years. Creatures follow advantage and shun harm, choosing where to perch. This is the instinct carved into the bones of beast folk. Years of hard lessons finally brought my reason to prevail. The full moon brings out the beast that overpowers human reason. I've heard far too many pledges of loyalty from orcs groveling at my feet. Right now, I pay no mind to these hollow vows of allegiance. Many years later, when I stood alone gazing at the full moon on the horizon, it suddenly dawned on me that little wolf cub had long resolved to devote its entire life to me. A werewolf's mating cycle typically lasts 1 week. 9. Eldar is allergic to inhibitors and requires constant soothing. I've cleared my schedule and had the butler relocate my work to the house. For the nth time, I'm reviewing Luna's background investigation in the study. She was born just 1 year before my mother lost her mind. The man who'd promised to love and care for her forever had already strayed. I rubbed my temples and shut my eyes briefly. Those gentle, Timid eyes perpetually brimming with tears surfaced in my mind once more. That's why I dislike Luna. Beyond just being the illegitimate daughter, she's the spitting image of my mother. Thinking her damsel in distress act would trigger men's protective instincts, she believed her understanding nature and self-sacrifice would earn a man's praise and affection. She thought love was supreme and promises were unbreakable. That's why when the illusion shattered, she found it utterly unbearable. Father has always been a respectable man, even when my mother was driven to madness. To outsiders, he remained the picture of a devoted husband and father, even earning praise for his unwavering loyalty. Little did they know, he'd already fathered several illegitimate children kept in the shadows. Among them, Luna was the most compliant. I easily uncovered Luna's past. Long ago, she exploited the Xia family's reputation to swindle people and rack up massive debts, all to improve her living conditions. She even got involved with shady figures from the underworld. While never crossing into outright criminal activity, the risks were always there. These matters could be trivial or serious. It all depends on how they're handled. Within 3 days, numerous negative reports about the Xia family's illegitimate daughter flooded the news. Voss could clearly recognize my handiwork, yet he chose to turn a blind eye, because this was exactly the outcome he wanted. The harsher I am with Luna, the more justification he'll have to strip me of my inheritance. I've frozen all bank accounts under Luna's name. Rumor has it she's being hounded by creditors daily, the stress driving her to tears around the clock. Everyone's waiting with popcorn for this rich family drama to unfold. Only Cain couldn't stand it any longer. On that rain-lashed midnight, he rushed over from Luna's place that very night, begging me to spare her life. Though pleading for mercy, he carried himself with unbroken dignity. He stood rigid, his voice icy. She's not like you, she knows nothing of this world. Such a blow would destroy her, not like me. I rolled the words on my tongue. She was naive and foolish, I was ruthless and cunning. Truly, we were nothing alike. So what are you trying to say? Please, young mistress, don't target her. Spare her life. Those 2 lines alone made me laugh out loud. I stepped onto his shoulder from above, leaning down slightly. Cain, by what authority, what right, do you order me around? With his spine rigid and eyes burning, he spoke as if after countless internal struggles. Let her go, and I'll come back to you. Come back to me. How dare he use himself as bargaining chip? I suddenly laughed, pressing down harder with my foot. What makes you think I'd want a filthy dog back? At 10 years old, he fought through round after brutal round until battered and bloodied, barely clinging to life, only then earning the right to kneel at my feet. My steward warned me a wolf's nature cannot be tamed, but defiance runs in my veins. I refused to believe it, devoting even more time to nurture his growth. For decades thereafter, I stood by him through every training session, watching his wounds scab over, break open, and heal again, watching him grow taller day by day, gradually mastering control over his form, witnessing him overcome trial after trial, growing ever stronger until he became the mightiest of orcs, until Luna appeared. Only then did I realize I'd never truly tamed him. Even now, his shoulders trembled but refused to yield, bearing the increasing weight of my stance with rigid determination. Defiant and unyielding, his gaze was stubbornly resolute, convinced he'd seen through me. He spoke with cutting precision. An overly young and immature flawed specimen would require too much time to train. Patience isn't your virtue. Worse still, he neither matches your ambitions nor could ever meet those ruthless, exacting demands of yours. The implication is clear. He's my best option. You investigated him. He remained silent. I gripped his chin, forcing eye contact, and snapped with a frown. Speak. He dodged the question and steered the conversation back to Luna. Spare her, and my life is yours to take. After 3 minutes of silent staring contest, I chuckled and patted his cheek. What a loyal guard dog you are, Cain, but your life, too filthy for my taste. I'm quite pleased with that young wolf pup. Youthful, obedient, full of energy, eyes only for his master. Unlike you, Cain. My voice dropped to a frigid whisper, driving the blade deeper. What makes an ungrateful wretch like you think you still deserve to stand by my side? The villa was eerily silent. 11. He stood frozen for a long moment, the rims of his restrained eyes flushing crimson. He suppressed the trembling in his fingertips, staring fixedly at me, as if verifying the truth of my words. He sensed things were veering off course. How could someone so driven by conquest reject him so decisively? How could you say something so heart-wrenching to him? The butler cautiously reminded. young mistress, Eldar seems to be in heat again. Without another glance at him, I immediately turned and went upstairs. At that very moment, he finally realized. All his belongings in the living room seemed to have disappeared, the first baby tooth hanging in the center of the living room. A keepsake of childhood, the fountain grass on the balcony that always got playful flicks from a tail tip. The name-engraved collar hanging by the entryway, polished smooth from years of wear, even those claw marks left on the wall during idle moments of scratching, gone. Everything's gone, not a single trace of his existence remained here. The once familiar home suddenly felt alien. His eyes stung unexpectedly, and he blinked hard. Eyes followed my every step up the stairs, pupils suddenly constricted. The room that once belonged solely to him, now housed a new beast man. The butler sternly ordered the bodyguards to drag him away. He suddenly began thrashing violently. No, he wouldn't leave. This was his home. He mustn't go anywhere. Scorching tears hit the ground. Overwhelming terror crashed over him, until that familiar yet icy door shut him out. Rainwater mixed with salty tears streamed into his mouth. Only then did he realize with horror, I had truly abandoned him. During this period, Luna's massive debt and the PR crisis caused SIA Group's stock prices to plummet. 12. Multiple partners announced the suspension of collaborations with the SIA family. Yielding to pressure, I proposed a clean break from negative influences initiative to preserve the SIA family's core interests. Voss was forced to make a difficult decision, severing paternal ties with Luna and demanding she settle personal debts independently. Just as the media storm began to subside, when he thought he could use this opportunity to temporarily strip me of my inheritance rights, I played a video during the shareholders' meeting. Though the footage was grainy and shaky, it captured his own confession of marital infidelity and the domestic violence that drove my mother to her death. That was footage I recorded at just 6 years old, holding a camcorder. I've been playing this game for over 20 years. Luna's involvement was accidental, yet it serendipitously became the spark that consumed Voss. I hold the very thing he fears most, the dignity he cherished most in his life. The crowd collectively held their breath. Twirling my pen with a mocking smile, I said, "Father, you now have two choices. First, I'll immediately expose this evidence and your illegitimate children to the world. Let everyone see the true face of SIA Corporation's devoted husband, CEO. You can certainly kick me out of SIA Corporation, but I wonder just how far the stock will plummet afterward, and whether you can endure the public scorn. Second, you will voluntarily resign from all positions in the group and sign the equity transfer agreement, allowing me to take full control of SIA Corporation. Out of respect for raising me these past 20 years, I'll let you keep an honorary title and a decent retirement package." He'd sensed this day would come long ago. Despite exhausting every effort to prevent it, he still couldn't avert this outcome. Between complete disgrace and losing power while preserving a shred of dignity, he had no choice. Suppressing his shivering body, he slowly chuckled. "Truly my daughter. Shrewd, calculating, willing to sacrifice family for justice," I replied humbly. "I learned from the best." Though I'd gained actual control of the SIA conglomerate, Voss's years of leadership meant many loyalists still remained within the group. 13. I was just worrying about lacking a pretext to purge these people. Then the perfect opportunity presented itself. Deputy Director Wang organized a banquet under the guise of celebrating the new chairman's inauguration. All I need is concrete evidence. They spiked the drinks with intent to assassinate the chairman, and I can wipe out every last remnant of opposition. The butler concocted a colorless, odorless potion that perfectly mimicked poisoning symptoms. My plan was to play along briefly, just dipping my toes in the water, but then something unexpected happened. Among the wine glasses the attendant brought out, the butler's prepared cup was missing. In their place were two signature cocktails. Vice President Wang wore a triumphant smile, declaring these were specially for celebration. Without batting an eye, I pointedly asked for the glass in his hand. VP Wang burst into laughter with his entourage. "Seems the young mistress still doesn't trust us common folk." He downed the glass in one gulp, staring straight at me. Surely the young mistress wouldn't disrespect us old retainers. Taking the proffered glass from the attendant, I smiled. Why would I? Voss is dumber than I thought, to think he'd resort to such underhanded tactics. Eldar stood behind me, his thin lips pressed tightly as he stared at the glass in my hand. Beyond the rich aroma of alcohol, there was a faint trace of something peculiar. The butler immediately retraced his steps upon realizing the plan had gone awry. The instant before I took the glass, the earpiece warned me both drinks had been tampered with. Date rape drugs. They planned to make me lose composure publicly, even capture compromising footage to force my resignation. Pathetic. Did they really think everyone here was on their side? I smiled and raised the wine glass to my lips. All eyes turned toward me. Suddenly Eldar stepped forward, deftly intercepting with the back of his hand before taking the cup under everyone's gaze. The young mistress doesn't handle alcohol well. Allow me to drink in her stead. He stared at Deputy Manager Wang and downed the glass of liquor without hesitation. Orc physiology makes them more susceptible to drug effects. Half a minute later, unnatural flush immediately spread across his face. I played along, feigning concern to match the situation. The butler stepped forward to investigate, then announced loudly, "The wine is poisoned. Someone's trying to assassinate the corporation's new chairman." The room erupted in uproar. The butler stayed behind to handle the aftermath. 14. I brought Eldar back to the villa. The doctor happened to be off duty today. His entire body had gone limp with weakness, his lashes damp and those usually bright eyes now glazed with a misty haze. Gazing up with dazed confusion, his flushed skin glowed faintly pink, his Adam's apple bobbing helplessly as he surrendered to my wandering fingers. His body craved more touch, yet all he offered were those pleading eyes, so obedient and pitiful. I teased him. "Do you even know what's in that drink? And you're drinking it for me? You're that worried about me?" He buried his face against my neck and let out a muffled My fingers mischievously trailed lower, giving a teasing pinch. A desperate, throaty moan escaped him instantly. "Want you?" he gasped, damp lashes fluttering wildly as he pressed urgently into my palm. "Just say what you want." I tapped lightly with playful insistence. "Want a kiss?" His voice came out hoarse and muffled. "Yeah," feigning innocence. I teased. "Where should I kiss you?" He bit his lip hard, feigning innocence. I teased. "With so many sensitive spots, how am I supposed to know where to kiss unless you tell me?" My fingertips traced upward, lightly circling the nape of his neck. His breath hitched as he buried his face deeper into the crook of my neck, the tips of his ears burning crimson. "Go on, where do you want me to kiss you?" His lashes dipped low, the flush from his ears creeping down his neck as he rasped, "I want a kiss." I froze momentarily before amusement sparkled in my eyes. Was he really this innocent? Blocking his approaching lips, I teased, "Aren't werewolves supposed to be picky? What if you meet someone sweeter, more devoted than me? Would your heart wander then?" His eyes still glistened with unshed tears, yet held stubborn determination. "Never. Eldar will always remain loyal to the young mistress." He tilted his head up and pressed closer. The restless tip of his tail stilled at last, curling obediently around my waist. Outside, the moonlight shone bright and tender, spilling over our entwined silhouettes. All those vows of loyalty, those promises of forever, melted into this pure and bashful kiss. End of main text. Epilogue. A decade holds special significance for me as a pivotal milestone in my first decade of life. I raised an ungrateful wretch. The second decade saw that wretch betray me, only for me to stumble upon a bloodied wolf cub in the gladiator pits. But the third decade, it haunts every dream I've had since. Perhaps keeping Voss was a mistake from the very beginning. He allied with the remnants, determined to eliminate me for good. It was just an ordinary day when that black sedan came speeding toward us. The moment the bullet shattered the window, Eldar lunged instinctively, shielding me from the spray of broken glass with his body. The scene descended into chaos, yet he still dragged his bloodied body and threw himself in front of me with his last ounce of strength. Bullets from multiple directions pierced his heart with deadly precision. The butler and bodyguards formed a protective shield as they dragged me away. Tears streamed down my face for the first time as I screamed his name in command. "Kane, get back here." For the first time, he defied my orders and charged forward with reckless courage, standing alone against the overwhelming tide of assassins, until the sharp blade pierced through his back, pinning him mercilessly against the wall. Crimson blood trickled slowly from the corner of his mouth. In his final moment, he turned to me with the faintest curl of his lips. I barked, "Speak," just like when we first met, in that sunless underground fighting pit, covered in blood yet wagging his tail. He said he'd follow me. Two silhouettes merged into perfect overlap at that moment. His lips trembled as he smiled through tears, whispering, "Eldar remains forever loyal to the young mistress." The suburban training ground lay abandoned, weeds brushing past our ankles. The steward asked if I wanted another orc. I stared at the scene before me and remained silent. I once thought loyalty was just a survival tactic for lesser creatures. After Cain's betrayal left its sting, I stopped believing any orc could defy their self-preserving nature, until he truly fell in a pool of blood. Fulfilling that promise with his life, the sky blazed with the dazzling brilliance of sunset. Sitting in the off-road vehicle, I stared blankly at the abandoned training ground before me. In a daze, I seemed to see that freshly trained young wolf again. Dark strands of hair whipped across his forehead as he came running breathlessly down the slope toward me. His eyes always held that particular brightness, a light reserved only for me. The wind blew straight into my eyes. Before I could react, scorching tears suddenly streamed down. Whenever I gaze at the full moon alone, I always catch the mingled scent of pine needles and bitter freshness. Maybe it's an illusion, or perhaps he's truly watching over me in another way. Just as the wolf cub promised, he would never leave the young mistress. Story 2. After the apocalypse, my husband and I planned to lead a simple life in a large villa. Unexpectedly, our two neighbors turned out to be quite competitive. One neighbor invested in high-tech defenses, while the other opted for sustainable development. Our home, on the other hand, was just stockpiling supplies like amateurs. In a post-apocalyptic world, living humans fighting over resources can be more terrifying than zombies, but what they don't know is that the secret weapons of our three families are not to be underestimated. I met my husband at a meeting for those with an apocalypse obsession. While most people marry on the basis of having a house, a car, and savings, we focused on having a secure shelter and complete supplies for the end times. No sooner had we warmed our marriage certificate than my husband mysteriously suggested visiting a place. Though I feigned surprise, I had already guessed that he was taking me to see the refuge he had long been eyeing. Oh, I mean our marital home. After driving for nearly 2 hours, we reached what could be considered a suburban area. It was very secluded with no significant military bases, government buildings, or transport hubs nearby. Only scattered factories and warehouses in the distance. In short, it perfectly matched the remote location we had discussed. There's actually a residential area here, I remarked, surprised. We drove into the community's gate, and it turned out to be a villa area. The layout was dispersed with independent courtyards. Due to its remoteness, the occupancy rate was very low. There wasn't a soul in sight, making it seem very safe and private. My husband was clearly proud. I did search for quite a while. We stopped in front of a 2-story building. However, due to limited funds, we could only afford this row house, not a detached one. My husband was somewhat disappointed, not as excited as at the beginning. I turned and hugged him tightly, planting a big kiss on his cheek. I love it. It's perfect. How about I make your favorite hot pot tonight? I am a university professor and my husband is a surgeon. Although our income is stable and we live comfortably, we are by no means wealthy. With the money that would buy a well-furnished house in the city center, we bought a row house in this desolate place. Going to work or shopping would take us 2 to 3 hours by car, something most prudent couples would scoff at. But we felt incredibly happy and satisfied, overwhelmed with emotion. I quickly took a closer look at our future home. A row house meant we shared walls with our neighbors. It was a 3-unit setup, but each had its own independent courtyard. The 3 2-story buildings were arranged in a shape, one large unit backed by 2 smaller ones. Our home was one of the smaller units. Strangely, despite the low occupancy rate in the whole area, it seemed like both our neighbors had already moved in. Their courtyard walls had been newly built, each higher than the next, completely impenetrable, so we couldn't see into our neighbors' yards at all. I was a bit puzzled and tugged at my husband's sleeve, pointing to the empty houses in the distance. I see. Those row houses over there are still unoccupied, given the current housing market. Who knows how long it will take for them to be filled? Why choose this place? My husband just gave a mysterious smile. You'll see soon enough. He clearly wanted to keep me guessing, so I didn't press further and excitedly ran inside the house. The house was already neatly arranged, with simple decorations and furniture, very cozy. What pleased me most was the huge basement, the same size as the ground floor, along with a sizable sunken courtyard and wide light wells. When did you manage all this without me knowing? I was tearful initially. I thought it was just a bare house and wondered how many years it would take from renovation to moving in. Seeing everything just as I had dreamed, I was so overwhelmed I didn't know what to say. Of course, I started preparing the moment I planned to marry you. Let's move in, Mrs. Tang. My husband hugged me with a big grin. The basic home decoration is already arranged. And the setup of refuge equipment and supplies, of course, I still need my wife's guidance. With a husband like this, what more could a wife ask for? Therefore, during our marital leave, we didn't go traveling or on a honeymoon. Instead, we completely immersed ourselves in preparing for doomsday supplies. We don't know in what form the real doomsday will strike, zombies, nuclear explosions, or alien invasions. Hence, we had to consider multiple scenarios. The basement was naturally the focus of our preparations, with sustainability as the standard for stockpiling. We divided the basement into 4 areas: living area, storage area, freezer area, and medical area. The living area includes a bedroom, kitchen, and bathroom. We even set up a small children's room, preparing for our future child. The storage area is our crucial base for stocking up on food and supplies. Rice, flour, oil, and daily necessities go without saying. We've stocked enough vacuum-packed goods to last a family of 3 for the maximum possible duration. Although we're preparing for the apocalypse, it hasn't arrived yet, and many things are still unknown, so it's best to minimize unnecessary waste as much as possible. The freezer area has transformed a few square meters of storage space into a small cold storage. This allows us to preserve more meat and ready-to-eat meals. The medical area is my husband's domain. In the event we cannot access medical care promptly, family members might get injured or sick, and my husband, being a surgeon, is naturally our biggest support. The medical area not only contains essential medications, disinfectants, bandages, and syringes, but even includes a sterile area and an operating table. After all, my husband is a surgeon. We've also dedicated a space for hydroponically grown vegetables, so even if we grow tired of dehydrated vegetables and compressed biscuits over a long period, we can enjoy some fresh greens occasionally. We primarily purchase our supplies online to keep a low profile, ensuring a complete stock while gradually buying over several months to fill any gaps, all proceeding methodically. However, my favorite feature in the basement, the light well, has now become a source of concern for me. If we want light to enter, the well must be made of glass. But what can glass withstand? If the yard is unfortunately invaded, anything could break the glass and threaten our safety. After much consideration, we decided to keep the laminated glass for lighting but isolated the area around the light well and installed a sturdy, sealed steel door for emergencies. This way, when it's safe, the main door can be opened, and the light well can be used normally in times of danger. Once the door is shut, the basement becomes an impenetrable cage to any intruder. The extensive preparations in the basement are actually meant to handle disasters like nuclear explosions, where survival on the surface becomes impossible. Most of the time, of course, we'd prefer to live above ground. During renovations, my husband fortified the walls and windows of the entire house for soundproofing and waterproofing, and installed an expensive air filtration system for whole house ventilation. Besides equipping each window with opaque curtains on both sides, the flooring and decor are not much different from a typical house. If the inside looked like a bomb shelter, it would be hard to explain to neighbors and friends who visit. As for the power supply, we naturally opted to install several high-power solar panels on the roof, but with a cold storage, the house's temperature control system, and the basement's drainage and dehumidification, including alarms and perimeter surveillance needing power, not to mention daily electricity use, I'm really not sure if these solar panels will suffice. I expressed my concerns. My husband just winked, seeming to have everything under control, and said, "That's exactly why I insisted on buying this house with neighbors." "Are you saying our 3 houses have a separate power supply?" I was surprised, and my husband shushed me, signaling not to make too much noise. I quickly covered my mouth. "Do we have to pay the electric bill?" My husband shrugged. "It looks like we still need to visit the neighbors." We went to visit the large household that backs onto ours. After ringing the doorbell, a well-maintained woman in her 40s came to the door. We brought some desserts, introduced ourselves, and were warmly welcomed into her house. "Just call me Ruby. Please come in," she said warmly. "Feel free to make yourself at home. Since moving here, it's rare to see people. It's usually quieter than a ghost town. It's nice to have some company for a change." it was clear that Ruby was quite hospitable. Both the courtyard and the interior of the house were meticulously decorated, and the furniture was obviously expensive. The decorations alone probably cost more than the house itself. For some reason, we ended up being neighbors. Ruby, I heard that only 3 homes in this area have their own power supply, and yours is one of them. We came today firstly to visit our neighbor, and secondly to discuss how we should settle the electricity bill. My husband asked straightforwardly. A woman dressed like a maid served us tea and brought over some fruit platters, treating us like honored guests, which made both my husband and me a bit uneasy and uncomfortable. However, Ruby didn't carry herself with the aloofness of a noble woman. She was actually very approachable. Our home has special needs. My husband's work is affected by power outages. Since the occupancy rate here is low and the power system is not yet fully developed, we decided to build our own power generator. It seemed wasteful to use it just for ourselves, so we thought we might as well share it with our neighbors. Why bother talking about electricity fees? This was a pleasant surprise. I was secretly thrilled but also curious about Mr. Ruby's profession. Given their wealth and generosity, he was certainly no ordinary man. I quickly expressed my sincere thanks. But my husband was distracted by several large posters on the wall. Are those Queen's Glory and Duck Battlefields? He asked. I turned to look. Are those the games you were playing online until late last night? He nodded vigorously. Ruby smiled gracefully. I don't know much about them, but I didn't expect that games designed by my husband would actually be played by someone. My husband looked even more excited than Ruby. You're being too modest. These games are some of the hottest right now. Very popular. I had no idea they were your husband's creations. That's really impressive. My husband shifted from using you to you all in his excitement. Ruby waved her hand modestly, her cheeks slightly flushed, but it was obvious that she was pleased by the praise. Don't say that. He's just one of the designers. There's a big team behind him. To use the words of your generation, he's essentially just a homebody who likes to code and play games at home. I couldn't help but think that, owning such assets and wealth, he couldn't just be a simple homebody. Even if he was, he must be a top-tier one. It turned out we had a reclusive mogul as a neighbor, and it would be crucial to foster a good relationship with them, perhaps visiting more often, not for anything else, but just in case of an apocalypse. It would be nice not to have our power cut off. My husband was a bit restless, seemingly eager to meet this top-tier homebody. I knew what he was thinking. He probably wanted to ask for some in-game perks. Ruby, astute as ever, might not understand games, but she knew how to handle social interactions. She immediately asked for my husband's gaming account, offering to let her husband check it out and perhaps join him in a game sometime. My husband was more thrilled than he was on our wedding day. Before we left, Ruby gave us another generous offer. In addition to the power generator, their family had also built a private network base station. If we didn't mind, we were welcome to share their network. It was unrestricted and much faster than the public network. Of course, we didn't mind at all. My husband and I gratefully accepted, not hesitating to take advantage of their generosity. We managed to save some money on our internet expenses at home. That same night, my husband's gaming account was suddenly equipped with SS-grade gear and rare hero skins that typically require a hefty investment. Needless to say, Ruby's after-sales service was remarkably efficient. My husband continued his gaming marathon into the wee hours, and I jokingly warned him that if he kept up these late nights, he'd bring dark circles under his eyes right into the operating room once our honeymoon leave was over. While we were laughing about it, the doorbell rang. Ding ding ding. Who could it be at this hour? I thought it might be Ruby since she's the only neighbor we know in this complex. My husband was just in his shorts, busy gaming, so I went to answer the door. However, upon opening the door, I was confronted by a nearly naked man standing there, dressed even more lightly than my husband. He was wearing nothing but a skirt made of leaves, looking every bit the wild man. I screamed, "Pervert!" Hearing my shout, my husband quickly grabbed a kitchen knife and rushed towards the door. Hold on, I'm a neighbor from next door. Please don't chop me. The man reacted quickly, retreating a good distance before my husband could reach the door. I regained some composure and asked, trembling, "Neighbor, why are you dressed like that at this late hour?" The man sighed in relief and scratched his head sheepishly. "Sorry for disturbing you so late. My smart lock ran out of battery while I was taking out the trash, and I couldn't get back inside, so I came to borrow a power bank. My husband eyed him suspiciously. To borrow a power bank dressed like that? The man glanced at my husband and, realizing that he wasn't much more dressed himself, dropped the subject. After borrowing our power bank and charging it for a while, the man was able to get back into his house. He promptly returned the power bank and mentioned that if we were free the next day, he'd like to invite us over as a way to apologize for the late intrusion and to get to know us, the new neighbors. Given our easygoing nature, my husband and I didn't hesitate to accept his invitation. The following afternoon, we visited our neighbor, who thankfully was dressed more appropriately this time. "Hello. I'm Noah. Please take care of me as we are neighbors." "Sure, sure," we replied. As we entered his home, it became apparent that his unusual attire the night before wasn't out of place given the setting of his yard. If no one had told me it was a residential yard, I might have mistaken it for a tropical rainforest, with tangled trees and a wild pond where the swimming pool should have been. The dense foliage was alive with the sounds of birds and insects, and there was hardly a normal path to walk on. "This yard of yours is quite natural." My husband finally found the words to describe it. Noah chuckled and led us through a doorway that resembled a cave, with the house's exterior walls also styled to look like stone and covered with unknown climbing plants, an unusual decor we had never seen before. "Welcome, welcome," a plainly dressed, glasses-wearing woman greeted us at the door. She was unmade up but naturally beautiful. "This is my wife," Noah introduced. "Nice to meet you. Sorry for intruding," I said. The woman pushed up her glasses, slightly embarrassed. "Calling me sister-in-law makes me sound old. Just call me Caroline." Caroline appeared a few years younger than both my husband and I, so addressing her by her first name did indeed feel more appropriate. After some pleasantries, we finally settled down on the couch. The interior of the house was much more ordinary, even simpler than ours. Caroline served us some fruit and mentioned, "I wasn't home last night when Noah. Our smart lock ran out of battery again. If it weren't for you guys, my husband might have ended up sleeping on the streets. I'm really grateful to you. It's what neighbors do, helping each other out. There was a little misunderstanding yesterday, but it's said that conflicts make friendships stronger." Haha. Noah is a tall and muscular man but quite shy by nature. "I apologize for the scare yesterday when I dressed like that. I didn't expect to get locked out just when I stepped outside, so I didn't change." My husband, with a mischievous grin that all guys understand, clapped Noah on the shoulder. "Oh, it's not what you guys are thinking." Realizing my husband misunderstood, Noah quickly tried to clarify but couldn't get his words out right, so Caroline stepped in. Noah is an expert in wilderness survival and a bit of an internet celebrity. He makes videos about outdoor survival skills. For convenience, we've turned our yard into a set. He was wearing that grass skirt yesterday just for filming. Noah quickly nodded in agreement. Right, I'm a normal person. I don't usually dress like that," we suddenly realized, or else we might have thought he was up to some weird cosplay while Caroline was not at home. Caroline called us to dinner, and we all gathered around the dining table. The meal was lavish with fish, meat, and a salad of some unidentifiable vegetables. After getting to know us better, Noah became quite warm and started drinking beer with my husband. As the men drank, they began to share freely. Noah's cheeks flushed with color. "Try the dishes. The fish are from our front yard pond." For the video, I even set up a chicken coop and some sheep and a cow on the side yard. Most of the vegetables are homegrown too. They aren't fancy varieties, just fresh. It really is different. My husband and I marveled, drooling over the fresh taste of natural eggs and wild vegetables. I was a bit curious, with so many animals, being neighbors and all, how come we never hear any noise from them? Noah touched his nose. "They are all raised secretly. I wouldn't dare disturb the neighbors. I've put up sheds and even soundproofed them. I'm worried about our neighbor behind us. She seems like a tough character to deal with. I wouldn't know what to do if she complained." "You mean Ruby? She's nice. She wouldn't complain about you guys. Don't worry." My husband, still thrilled with his new gear, naturally spoke highly of Ruby. "You guys know each other already." My husband was slightly tipsy, more than just know each other. Burp. "We just met yesterday." The lunch ended with Noah drunk. My husband got home and vomited twice, emptying his stomach of all the natural wild flavors before he finally stopped. Men's friendships are simple like that. A heartfelt binge drinking session, and they become like brothers, sharing everything without reserve. We learned that Noah was a retired military man. Caroline started as Noah's filming assistant and later became his wife. We also found out that they had been trying to conceive for a year, but hadn't been successful yet. As time swiftly passed, we had been living here for 3 years now, with a sweet 2-year-old daughter, and our stockpile of apocalypse supplies steadily growing. Ruby's husband, a true homebody, had only been seen in fleeting moments over the 3 years, rarely stepping outside, but he and my husband played online games frequently, making them virtual friends. Ruby's family, child-free by choice, enjoyed lively gatherings during my school breaks. She often invited me to have tea and enjoy the flowers. Eventually, Caroline joined our tea parties too. Our families grew closer. Noah and his wife still weren't planning to have children, and were recently considering trying IVF. In the midst of such ordinary days filled with family small talk, a zombie virus outbreak occurred overnight globally. My husband and I were cured of our apocalyptic delusions. Because it was no longer a delusion, the apocalypse was upon us. When the apocalypse arrived, I was on summer vacation, my husband wasn't on night shifts, and our daughter was right there with us. Other family members were also living on the top floors of high-rise buildings, and we had gradually stockpiled enough supplies for them, so there was no immediate worry. It was a quiet night outside. When we renovated, we built a 2-meter-high wall topped with a 1-meter-high fine mesh wire fence, which could be electrified. Caroline next door even joked about us, asking if we were hiding some treasure at home to have such fortified defenses. We only mentioned that we were afraid of potential burglaries due to our remote location. Eventually, we managed to convince Ruby and Noah to install electrified wire fences at their homes too. Previously, there was no need to turn on the power to avoid accidentally hurting innocent people, but now, my husband and I activated all the defense systems immediately to prevent any accidents, whether it was zombies or people with ill intentions trying to climb over the walls into our homes. It wasn't going to be easy. Our neighborhood had few people, naturally fewer infections, and with no villages nearby or stores behind. So far, there hasn't been a large-scale zombie horde outside. No lights. My husband suddenly remembered. We had stocked many blackout curtains in the basement, intended for our neighbors. It wasn't obvious yet, but if the power went out across the city in a few days, any place with light would become a target. My husband quickly went online to chat with our neighbors, urging them to come to the only wall adjoining all 3 of our family's yards, where he threw curtains over to them. He also advised them to turn off all light sources in their yards, making our homes appear uninhabited to stay safe temporarily. Once everyone had their curtains up and outdoor lights off, we went online again for the first post-disaster neighborhood strategic meeting. My husband, neighbors, these are extraordinary times. Our 3 families are next to each other. We share our fortunes and our misfortunes. We need to stay united and supportive to overcome these difficult times. Everyone understood that under these circumstances, if one neighbor's house was compromised, it could likely affect the other 2. So, whether willing or not, it wasn't wrong to align our efforts and think as one during such times. Our relationship between the 3 families was very harmonious. The 3 housewives had become close friends, and the men were good buddies, net friends, drinking buddies, and gaming teammates. But that was during peaceful times. Now, in a life-or-death situation, no one could guarantee that friends wouldn't turn against each other over resources. Thus, to avoid such situations, balancing each other with the unique supplies each possessed was key. However, my husband and I still underestimated our neighbor's scope and affection. Ruby, our house will continue to provide electricity and internet for everyone, so nobody needs to worry about power outages. I breathed a sigh of relief. As long as Ruby could keep providing power, all would be well. My husband, Ruby, you're awesome. Noah, +1, Caroline, 6, me, my family likes to stockpile food. We've stored extra grains and flour, so when everyone's supplies run out, we can provide the staples. Indeed, my husband and I had stored more than just the various grains and cereals we had accumulated over the years were enough to sustain our 3 households for several years. We even purchased rice seedling containers to grow a small amount of rice, ensuring we had more than enough food for ourselves. Caroline, how can we have staples without vegetables? Thanks to our neighbors for not complaining, I can offer fresh vegetables, pond fish, and free-range eggs, Also, they have fresh milk. I had forgotten that Noah's family also keeps a cow, Ruby. Thanks, flowers, husband, Noah, I remember you. Have some sheep, right, Noah, more monks than meat, only sheep milk and wool available. Husband, joking aside, dear neighbors, a sincere reminder to avoid cooking highly aromatic or strong-smelling food to prevent attracting more trouble, Ruby, Tang is right, once humans are infected with WD-033, they lose their human characteristics and rely solely on their sense of smell to find targets to attack, so, definitely avoid cooking food with strong odors, Caroline. WD-033. Is that the name of the virus? Everyone noticed that Ruby didn't reply for a while, and it took a few minutes before she responded, Ruby, yes, that's right, just saw it on the news, my husband and I quickly turned on the TV, the virus had just broken out, and reporters were broadcasting live. The news ticker reported that the outbreak was suspected to be caused by a leak in a laboratory in Country M. The specific details and cause of the virus leak were still under investigation. A few minutes later, the news broke that the virus, designated WD-033, is a prion virus with extremely high contagiosity, and everyone was advised to reduce outings and stay at home as a precaution, just broadcasted. My husband was a bit confused and unsure when he asked me. I nodded, maybe other TV stations had the news faster, that was the only explanation, otherwise how would Ruby, who enjoys her daily tea and flowers, know the name of the virus? My husband and I only questioned it for a moment before we let it go. After all, survival was more important than anything else. A week after the zombie virus spread, our three families were still safe. Through surveillance, we saw that only a few scattered zombies wandered the streets, posing no significant threat. We held daily online neighborhood meetings to keep each other informed. Noah, we're out of food, only have a bag of tomato-flavored chips left, which is our last dry food, willing to trade it for a bag of rice with Tang at a discount. Husband, reluctant, but I don't like tomato flavor. Noah, then I'll make you a pot of fish soup to nourish Alice. Alice is my 2-year-old daughter. Husband, voice message uncle, chips, uncle, chips, chips, Alice replied while holding her dad's phone, calculating. Noah's family was out of grains, but they had vegetables and eggs, so they wouldn't starve. But Ruby's family never mentioned a lack of grains or vegetables. Had they stocked up in advance? My husband and I discussed privately the necessity of everyone disclosing their supplies to calculate the necessary item usage and food distribution among our three families to prepare for long-term self-sufficiency. I briefly mentioned the idea in the group chat. Actually, it was mainly for Ruby's family to hear. Although they are nice and friendly, they always seemed secretive, as if they were hiding something. But before Ruby could reply, a message from Ruby's husband, a top-level homebody, arrived. You should know, apart from arranging games with my husband and Noah, he hardly ever spoke in the group. Top-level homebody, alert, someone is trying to enter our yard. Caroline, don't we have electrified barbed wire on our walls? How did they get in? Top-level homebody, about 3 people. They knocked over a few zombies with shovels, brought a ladder, and wore insulating suits. They're now on the side of the house, trying to climb into the yard. This is clearly a planned intrusion. These few houses are built much more securely than other residences, and still, they attract too much attention. Top-level homebody, Ruby, and I are in the backyard now, facing 3. With just the 2 of us, the odds are too slim. We need to think of something. The top-level homebody shared the home surveillance with us. We all clearly saw 3 men slowly and clumsily climbing over the electrified, spiked fence. Due to the height and security features, they wore insulating suits, which made their movements stiff and their climbing slow. Noah, if only we had guns. Noah is a veteran, but even with all our precautions, we couldn't stockpile such prohibited weapons. Top-level homebody, would a toy gun work? Noah, what kind of toy? Can it hurt people? Top otaku, a realistic toy sniper rifle, with the same range as a real gun, but it uses marbles instead of real bullets. If someone without protective gear gets hit, they'll bruise and be injured, and it can even shoot birds. Noah seemed to ponder for a moment, probably assessing the enemy's strength. Noah, it'll do. Through surveillance, we saw in the backyard's common wall, Top otaku threw the toy gun into Noah's yard. Noah, wearing a tank top, silently crouched in the shadows at the base of the wall. This was the only spot in Noah's yard from where the wall of Ruby's yard could be seen. Thankfully, these three were climbing over from the side, otherwise, even with a gun, Noah would have had no recourse. Pop, 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 three soft noises. The toy gun even had a silencer attached. The three who climbed the wall were accurately hit in the head, cried out in pain, and uncontrollably fell backward, tumbling over the wall from nearly 3 meters high. Even someone prepared and controlling their body would fall roughly, let alone these three who fell backward. Top otaku, impressive thumbs up. Husband, Noah is awesome. Through the surveillance video shared by Top Otaku, we saw that the three who fell down were knocked out cold. Soon, the scent of their blood attracted several zombies nearby. They were dragged away, disappearing from our sight. We all knew what that meant, and the chat quieted down. We are just ordinary people. Although our three families tacitly chose not to play the saint, it doesn't mean we aren't frightened or saddened by such scenes. In this apocalyptic mode, given our insignificance, perhaps all we can do is struggle to protect our closest loved ones. After the near invasion at Ruby's house, we became more vigilant to deal with sudden emergencies. Our security levels and defense measures had to be replanned and repositioned, but to rearrange, we needed materials and resources, which our single family could not bear alone. Given the current situation, although our three families are separated by walls, we have already faced death together once, forming one team, one big family. Since we've set the tone for coexistence, understanding and trusting our teammates is a must. Therefore, the previously mentioned full disclosure is imperative. Thus, the second online post-disaster neighborhood strategic conference officially began. Husband, neighbors, to cope with the disaster and maintain a healthy and positive relationship, we must adhere to the 4 mutual principles: mutual honesty, sharing resources, mutual aid, and no secrets among us. Caroline, Don seems a bit institutionalized. Noah, spare no details, overlook no facts. Caroline, you're a bit uncultured. It's spare no details, withhold no information. Noah and Caroline were joking, but we were all concerned about Ruby's family, who hadn't made a sound for a long time, just when we thought this strategic meeting would end prematurely due to incomplete attendance. Ruby finally replied, Ruby, sorry, neighbors, I do have some secrets. I was hesitant, but after discussing it with my husband, we decided to share this secret with you, because you just saved our lives. In this battle, we are comrades, we are family, and we should not keep secrets. But I sincerely hope that after hearing my story, you can still trust our family. After speaking, she sent an installation file for a chat software made by Top Otaku. To avoid leaking secrets, we would use this software for future online communications. Ruby spoke very seriously and sincerely. I knew she had secrets. A woman's intuition is often right. The chat was momentarily silent, everyone waiting for Ruby to reveal her secret. Nobody wants to interrupt Ruby. The story I'm about to tell is quite fantastical. Just take it as a story. Ruby, before moving here, I was sent to Country M as a researcher. During my tenure, I came across an extremist organization in M that had been around for a century. This group was highly secretive. On the surface, they were conducting cutting-edge biological research, but in the shadows, they were developing a dangerous virus. Their aim was to use this virus to control human minds, turning people into slaves to their commands, transforming them into war machines or murderous maniacs. In short, they were up to no good, and clinical trials showed they were nearly successful. My mission was to infiltrate this organization and dismantle their operation. Of course, there were many involved in this mission, both from my own and foreign countries. Many entered but few returned. I was one of the lucky ones. My inconspicuous appearance helped me stay under the radar. Oh my God, what kind of fantastical story is this? I thought I had entered some sort of fiction, but Ruby, so beautiful and approachable, who would have guessed she had such incredible experiences? Ruby continued typing. Though the mission sounds thrilling, I was just a researcher without any combat skills. My plan was to destroy key research data and results at the right moment. I spent nearly a decade undercover, becoming a core believer in the organization. I won't go into how challenging it was, but I succeeded in eliminating all the main data and backup files before making my escape. However, I overlooked the most important file, the brains of the researchers. I could destroy all the recorded data, But not the memories and knowledge of the people. One of the key researchers, the founder of the organization, remained unidentified and out of reach. After returning, I learned their research had been severely set back, which somewhat accounted for a successful main mission, but victory was far from complete. With my cover blown, I could no longer return to the mission and had to start living a normal life in hiding. It was only 3 years ago that I started noticing odd behaviors in people infected by the virus from news and viral videos. I deduced that the organization was still tirelessly progressing. My destruction of their data caused their outcomes to deviate slightly. Those who were supposed to be precision attackers became somewhat like the legendary zombies, and from what I understand, these viruses are highly contagious. After the mission, I lost all contact with my superiors, not knowing how to report my suspicions. I could only silently build a refuge here and stockpile post-disaster supplies. I tried warning friends I met during my seclusion to prepare, but for some reason, they gradually distanced themselves from me, so I dared not speak of this matter to others. As for the power station and such, of course, it's partly due to my husband's job, but more importantly, it's to prepare for situations like these. I'm sorry, dear neighbors, for not informing you sooner or warning you of the impending disaster. I hope you can forgive my selfishness and helplessness. And thank you all, you who brought me back into the light and into normal life, the most important people in my life. That's the story I wanted to tell. Also, I've prepared our supplies for 3 households. I can finally tell you openly, when there's a shortage of food or clothing, I'll support you fully. The group chat was silent for a long while, but after 5 minutes, Noah, I'm out of food at my place. All I have left is a bag of tomato-flavored chips. I'd like to trade them with Ruby for a bag of rice. Husband, voice message, Ruby, hugs, hugs. After Ruby's family confessed, our family and Noah's chose to continue trusting and uniting. Of course, my husband and I decided to be honest about why we had been hoarding supplies. To show our sincerity, Noah, it seems like we're the only ones who haven't prepared anything. Husband, don't say that. Your family is into sustainable ecological development. Compared to you, we're just beginners. Noah, true, if we want something fresh, we have to rely on me. Ruby, after the last incident where we were attacked, I think it's necessary to distribute some weapons to you. My brother-in-law still has some in stock. Come over and choose some when you have time. Ruby's words reminded me that I had been so focused on being honest that I had forgotten about more important things. Me, neighbors, we also need to schedule a defense upgrade. Ruby, let's all meet at my house and discuss this together. We need to share resources and materials, as simply walking out the door to visit each other isn't realistic. Communicating at the outdoor communal wall is too conspicuous and not safe, so we found a common passage in the basement. Since we live in connected townhouses, we share a utility room in the basement, besides the shared walls. This is our only common space. Fortunately, during renovations, each of our homes had installed a security door in the utility room. The space in the utility room is quite spacious, and the top homebuddy had installed electronic locks he had prepared earlier. These locks can recognize fingerprints or be opened with a mechanical key, but they require the correct identification from any 2 of the 3 households to open. For example, if I want to go to Ruby's house, either my husband or I, and Ruby or her husband, must unlock it simultaneously in the same way for the doors to open. If only one household tries or if the unlocking methods differ, then the door won't budge. The same steps apply when returning home. If an outsider tries to force the lock or break in, it would trigger some destructive mechanisms. According to the top homebody, there are some vital pipelines and equipment in the utility room that are crucial for survival, so it's wise to be cautious. The electronic lock has a fantastic feature. It can collect a fingertip blood sample painlessly while scanning fingerprints. Ruby used to be a researcher at a lab in Country M. Knowing that her task was not yet complete and before the crisis erupted, she had restarted her research on the WD-033 zombie virus. Thus, after the zombie outbreak swept the globe, she quickly developed a method to detect the virus. The blood data from the lock is directly linked to the database in her home lab, which can immediately identify if a visitor is infected with the zombie virus. The doors will only unlock if the test results are clear and both households unlock simultaneously. Although these measures are cumbersome, they ensure the safety of every neighbor, and we are all willing to cooperate. So, we 3 families registered our fingerprints, collected blood samples, and then opened the security door together, finally arriving at Ruby's home in this post-apocalyptic world. This was our first face-to-face meeting as a group. Alice sat in the baby carriage, curiously looking around Ruby's home. We followed Ruby to a room on the top floor, and after turning on the light, we were all amazed and speechless. It was like a toy city had been set up at home. The spacious room was tightly packed with display cabinets full of various toy models and figurines. One entire wall was covered with gun models, which to the uninformed, might look like an armory. The top homebody scratched his head. I work in gaming, and these are all weapon models from my games. I've collected so many without realizing it, so I decided to dedicate a room to them. Noah and my husband's eyes lit up, practically drooling. This is just too cool. Ruby hurriedly called us over. Quick, pick something that suits you. Although they're models, they can shoot birds just like the one Noah used the other day. We each chose a model and even took home a box of marbles. Caroline, looking quite out of place, carried a large sniper rifle with a hint of worry. Let's not even start on whether we know how to use these weapons. Even if we were all sharpshooters, these toys could only handle a few scattered enemies. If we're facing a group, we'd be in big trouble. Caroline's words echoed my own concerns. Zombies are a low-intelligence species that only move in a flat trajectory. They can't climb or strategically plan their paths but rely solely on instinct and scent to find prey. As long as we stay within the walls and don't go out, the threat from zombies is almost nil. Compared to zombies, humans who harbor malicious intentions and violently snatch survival resources are far more terrifying. The apocalypse has just begun, and our remote location has kept most people away for now. If more time passes, or if the three who attacked Ruby's home were just scouts for a larger force, our situation could become extremely dangerous. Ruby noticed our worries and patted Caroline and me on the shoulders, about to say something. Suddenly, all of our wristwatches started vibrating. These watches, a gift from Ruby, allow for wireless communication within the house, real-time surveillance viewing, and an alarm function. This vibration mode signaled that there were living people within 50 meters of our house. Ruby's family had installed surveillance cameras and alarm sensors around their villa within a 50-meter perimeter. Soon after they moved in, we gathered to watch the surveillance footage, which even had audio capabilities. 3 large jeeps and a small pickup truck were approaching. They parked behind Ruby's house, about 30 to 40 meters directly in front of my and Noah's houses. About 20 strong men disembarked from the vehicles, each carrying an iron pickaxe. The leader, a tall man with a scar across his face, looked intimidating. With just one glance, he casually asked, "Is this the place?" A bald, muscular man beside him nodded. "Right. The 3 brothers Patrick came here to scout and never returned. This secluded place, still a villa district with few people and zombies, suggests they weren't attacked by zombies but likely ambushed by one of the homeowners." The scarred man squinted, scrutinizing our house. "These villas are obviously more secure than others. Everyone, be cautious. Once we take over this place, we'll have a strong base, if we're lucky. There might even be some rich ladies for us to enjoy." Someone whistled excitedly, only to be slapped by the bald man. "Keep it down, boy. Don't alert them or I'll feed you to the zombies." The group began unloading ladders, ropes, and even large knives from the pickup, moving smoothly and in perfect coordination, even repelling a few wandering zombies nearby. It was clear they were organized, professional raiders. My husband gripped my hand tightly, his palms sweaty. "We can't let them in. Only by keeping them out can we resist." "Ruby, can your toy guns be equipped with anesthesia?" "I can prepare it right away," Noah said, alert. "How's the view from your rooftop?" "I need a high vantage point," said the ultimate homebody, who hadn't spoken for a while. "Let's all stay calm for now," he said, exchanging a glance with Ruby, who nodded at him. "Wait until they get closer. I have a better way to deal with them." After fiddling on the computer for a few seconds, the homebody lightly tapped the "OK" button. "Done," he said confidently, straightening up. But in the surveillance footage, the group was ready and stealthily advancing towards our house. We looked at each other, but trusting in our plan, no one voiced any doubts. Noah was already in position with a toy sniper rifle, ready to act. Ruby, on the other hand, elegantly sat down with a coffee, as if she were watching an art film instead of a surveillance feed. The homebody rubbed his hands together, eager to see his plan unfold. He was As excited as if the game he designed was going online for a test. "Let me keep you in suspense for a moment," he said. The group was getting closer, and we could even see that they had already placed ladders against the wall. Caroline crawled into Noah's arms. I picked up Alice with one hand and pinched my husband's palm with the other, my heart pounding. Once they climbed over the wall, suddenly, our watches vibrated again. The watch could differentiate between humans and zombies. The alert this time indicated zombies approaching. Ruby sipped her coffee, her expression calm. On the screen, zombies started appearing, one by one. Soon, dozens of zombies were swarming from all directions. More zombies were steadily approaching from afar. The bald man spat. "Damn, who said this place was remote and had fewer zombies? It's turning into a zombie tide," he cursed. They immediately started swinging their pickaxes at the zombies. A few quick responders began climbing the ladders, trying to get over the wall first to escape the horde. Noah wasn't about to give them that chance. Anyone who climbed the ladder and showed their heads over the wall got headshot and knocked over by his silenced weapon. The scene outside the yard was chaotic at times. The group of 20-something people was gradually overwhelmed. Several were bitten, others knocked unconscious and dragged away. The bald man, while fighting off zombies, cried out, his voice breaking into sobs, "Boss, this place is cursed. We're almost completely wiped out." Scarface had already been fending off zombies while running towards the Jeep. Retreat. The few surviving wounded barely managed to get into the vehicle, only to be surrounded tightly by the horde. Scarface slammed on the gas pedal, shouting angrily, "This godforsaken neighborhood must be a zombie nest. Who the hell gave us this intel? I'm going to chop him when we get back." The bald man's face was smeared with snot and tears. "It was just Patrick and his two buddies who left that message. I was an idiot to come here for revenge. Just now, I saw them among the zombies, biting several of our brothers." Scarface floored the accelerator, finally breaking through the wall-like crowd of zombies. Thanks to the Jeep's robust performance, they vanished into the night. 15. Scarface's raiding party eventually escaped with 5 people. These 5 had various bites and scratches. It was uncertain if they would become infected, but that was no longer our concern. After watching the surveillance, we all felt weak-legged and slumped down on the floor. What in the world is happening? Why are there so many zombies? My husband voiced our confusion. The top geek began his speech on game design philosophy. "Actually, we've installed a device on the roof of the mansion that emits sound waves we've programmed, covering about 5 kilometers. As you all know, Ruby was a lab researcher. They created monsters that could be controlled through sound waves. Similarly, although zombies behave a bit off track, they still strongly react to these sound waves, which is why they follow commands and gather here. Thanks to Ruby's previous recordings of the sound wave frequencies and bands, we came up with this device. It's meant to counter the current situation. We definitely wouldn't have the upper hand in a direct confrontation with a large group of living people, but the enemy of our enemy is our friend, right?" We couldn't help but applaud the geek couple for their ingenuity. "But what about the zombies outside? It seems like they are gathering in increasing numbers," my husband remarked, glancing at the surveillance screen. The top geek scratched his head. "We can't do much about that. We just have to wait for them to lose interest and disperse on their own. It's a minor bug, so we didn't dare use the device when fewer people were around." The zombies were kept outside the reinforced wall, which we believed would not be breached unless by a massive horde. It's just a bit unsettling to watch. Caroline and I rubbed our goose-bumped arms, while Ruby still had the mood to serve us some desserts. 16. Perhaps this villa had become notorious among the raiders, because, after Scarface, no other raiding teams showed up. Our lives have finally regained some semblance of peace. After 3 months of living as if it were the end of the world, we've gradually adjusted to the new pace of life. Through the radio, we learned that our country had swiftly established bases for survivors, started developing vaccines, and was vigorously conducting post-disaster relief operations. Our neighborhood is quite remote and sparsely populated, so it was 2 months after receiving this news that an armed military convoy passed through. As they cleared the zombies along the roadside, they broadcasted a call for survivors through loudspeakers. After observing for a while, my husband and I quickly got online. "Neighbors, should we head to the survivors' base? Caroline, we can still sustain ourselves. Maybe we shouldn't burden the country just yet." "Ruby, I've just checked our remaining supplies. we have enough stockpiled for our 3 families to last 3 to 5 years, and we've also grown some crops in the sunken garden of our basement. My husband and I built a small greenhouse where we grow a variety of crops and vegetables, and of course, we've also shared seeds with our neighbors. Each family grows different varieties. And with this setup, we can survive together for over 5 years, if we're lucky. By then we'll be able to emerge and join others in rebuilding our homes. Top nerd, the safety level is sufficient for now, but I will gradually improve our security measures. So, we all decided to stay put and not head to the survivors' base for now. From our surveillance, we noticed that the convoy stayed in our area for nearly an hour, but no other survivors appeared. Before leaving, the convoy left behind some supplies, which we tacitly decided not to take, opting to leave them for those in the neighborhood who truly needed them. Over the next 2 weeks, the convoy visited our area 3 times, distributing supplies at different locations each time. After their last visit, the broadcast from the truck looped for an hour. They announced that for the next 6 months, they would visit our area monthly to clear any remaining zombies and search for survivors. Seeing the response and speed of our nation's relief efforts gave us a sense of security, and the constant worry we had felt began to subside. Although we don't know exactly when, we believe that this post-apocalyptic period will end soon. Life has returned to a semblance of normalcy, with most of the urban areas still without power and internet. All major gaming platforms were down, so Top Nerd developed a game just for my husband and Noah to play over our local network. The 3 of them would game together into the night, reminiscent of the times before the apocalypse. Meanwhile, I embraced a slower pace of life, farming, reading, and taking care of the children. Occasionally, I would join the neighbors for tea, admire the wildflowers in Ruby's overgrown garden, or fish in Noah's pond. This pleasant life continued for half a year until one day, Noah urgently got online. Noah, Caroline is feeling very unwell. Does anyone have any medicine for stomach ailments? My husband, the only doctor here, immediately responded, Husband, what exactly are the symptoms? Noah, she vomits whatever she eats, is weak in the limbs, and looks pale. Why do these symptoms sound so familiar? I quickly shared my thoughts with my husband and instructed Noah not to give Caroline any medicine before we arrived at his house. Sensing the seriousness from our conversation, Ruby's family decided to visit Noah's home with us. Caroline indeed looked very uncomfortable, slumped on the sofa, weak and listless. Noah was visibly panicked. We haven't eaten anything unusual these past few days, just the usual grains and perhaps some fish from the pond that had just died. Could it have been spoiled? My husband patted Noah on the shoulder. Let's not panic. We'll assess the situation and then decide what to do. I mysteriously pulled something out of my pocket and placed it in Caroline's hand. What's this? Caroline asked. Puzzled, I gestured for her to read the instructions on the package, and her eyes widened. You mean I nodded. I had prepared this earlier. It might be expired, but it's very likely that it won't affect the result. Ruby immediately understood what I meant and accompanied Caroline to the restroom. By then, Noah had also realized what was happening. He scratched his head, looking a bit overwhelmed. It can't be, right? We've never succeeded in all these years. My husband nudged him with his elbow and winked at him. If we could live through the apocalypse, what's impossible? Speaking of which, we've stockpiled everything except for contraceptives. Maybe it's fate. 5 minutes later, Ruby and Caroline came out of the restroom, seeing the vivid 2 red lines on the pregnancy test. Each of us felt genuinely happy for them. 17, Caroline was pregnant, and it was the most joyful news since the apocalypse began. We drew the blackout curtains at Noah's house, decorated it brightly, and celebrated quietly through the night. Now, the most important thing was to prepare for the arrival of the baby. Unexpectedly, Ruby, who had chosen not to have children, had stockpiled baby formula, diapers, bottles, and medicine for every stage of a newborn's needs. She had thoughtfully considered the long-term needs of her neighbors, even accounting for the possibility of new additions. Our family also did our best. Although my husband wasn't an obstetrician, from the moment we confirmed Caroline's pregnancy, he began studying obstetrics and gynecology to prepare for the baby's birth. I started organizing, digging out old clothes and toys from when Alice was little. Noah transformed into a super caregiver, taking over all the farming and household chores. It was tough for him to keep coming up with Varied meals from our limited supplies to boost Caroline's appetite, thinking of the lively little child who would soon be bouncing around the house. A warm feeling enveloped us all. It felt like a continuation of ourselves, like a bright light suddenly piercing through the gloom of the apocalypse. When Caroline was 6 months pregnant, we celebrated the first spring festival since the apocalypse. The streets were still deserted, but inside our 3 villas, it was exceptionally lively. Noah cooked a feast with a chicken, a rare treat, and we enjoyed exotic delicacies as we celebrated the spring festival together. We made dumplings with chive and egg fillings and steamed a big pot of buns, symbolizing rising prosperity. The ultimate homebody showcased his skills again in front of everyone. With masterful calligraphy, he wrote 3 pairs of couplets. The content of the couplets was not the usual wishes for wealth and eternal green of all seasons, but expressed beautiful hopes for the end of the apocalypse and peace for all families, which was very fitting for the occasion. At the dinner table, Noah brought out his long-treasured Mutai liquor, pouring a glass for each of us. He was somewhat emotional, continuously thanking us, his neighbors, for helping him survive the apocalypse. Then, he looked up, thanking the heavens for finally granting him and his wife a child. We were all joyful, laughing and crying, momentarily forgetting to control our voices, but then, remembering the soundproofing in the house, we indulged ourselves once more. Ruby drank several glasses, her face betraying her concerns. 18. After much prodding, Ruby finally spoke up, fueled by alcohol. It turned out she was still using her collected data to continue developing a serum antibody against zombie infection. She had made some breakthroughs in her research but had also hit a bottleneck. She urgently needed a live zombie for clinical research. However, the zombies in our area had mostly been cleared out by the military a while ago, and we hadn't spotted any on our surveillance for at least a month. To capture a live zombie, I'll have to activate the sonic device from last time. Ruby looked worried. Activating this device could lead to varying outcomes, either no zombies within the range of the device's sound waves, or it might attract a horde, surrounding our house and posing a greater danger to us. Although we managed to capture a zombie, my experiment is still not successful. We fully understand the immense pressure Ruby is carrying on her shoulders, and all we can do is support her unconditionally. Ruby, as long as it benefits humanity, you have our full support to proceed. Catching zombies, that's something I, Noah, am really good at. Just let me know if you need help. After saying this, Noah tilted his head back and downed a shot of spicy liquor, and his husband followed suit. In terms of combat strength, I'm not as good as Noah, but as a lab assistant, I'm quite reliable. Ruby, trust us, you're not fighting alone. Caroline and I hugged Ruby tightly. The path of revolution is marked by both successes and failures, gains and losses, but regardless, we will always support you. The ultimate homebody had already collapsed on the table, but his hand never left Ruby's. Ruby, rarely seen smiling, now emptied her glass in one go. So, on the morning of the 5th day of the new year, we began our operation. We all gathered at Ruby's house, watching as the ultimate homebody and Ruby pressed the button that summoned the zombies. It turned out that the military's extermination efficiency was very high. Even after half an hour of the sound waves being activated, there was no movement in the vicinity. 40 minutes and 32 seconds later, just as we were about to give up, everyone's watches suddenly beeped, indicating that a zombie had entered our surveillance range. We were both surprised and delighted, and quickly checked the monitor, only to see a female zombie appear on the screen. This zombie was fully clothed, with no excessive wounds or dirt on her body except for her grayish-white eyes and blackened teeth. Her limbs were also intact, indicating she was a zombie that had recently turned. However, our attention was drawn to her stomach. Her abdomen was slightly bulging, clearly indicating that she was pregnant before her transformation. Caroline looked at the screen and instinctively touched her own belly. Ruby, I want to ask, if a zombie was pregnant before transforming, will the child also become a zombie? Ruby shook her head. Although I have not conducted exact experiments, given the circumstances, it's highly likely that the child is no longer alive, perhaps because a new life was expected at home. We hesitated as we faced the monitor. Noah clenched his teeth. Regardless, whether she was pregnant before or not, she is now a very dangerous entity, and she is our only option right now, isn't she? Noah's words awakened us, and we put aside our misplaced compassion and commenced the plan to capture the zombie. After turning into zombies, regardless of gender, age, or size, their strength becomes extraordinarily great. Thus, our plan had to be meticulous to minimize injuries among our team before we could implement the capture. Noah, with the most combat experience among us, whether against humans or non-humans, crafted a strange shape with ropes, which he called a corpse binding rope. He had used this type of binding on zombies in the deep mountains while he was still in the army. These were supposed to be confidential operations, but now that zombies were roaming the streets, mentioning zombies was no longer a concern. The method of tying the rope could also subdue wild boars gone mad, so it was more than sufficient for a zombie. Ruby quickly turned off the sonic device. Noah had already positioned himself atop the perimeter wall, and, seizing the right moment, he jumped down, landing firmly on the ground. He skillfully looped a lasso around the zombie's body, her husband, and the top-level nerd burst out of the main gate, each grabbing one end of the rope. The zombie was securely trapped in the middle of the rope. From the surveillance, we noticed Noah's lasso seemed to deliberately avoid the zombie's swollen belly. The three men worked together and finally dragged the zombie into the yard, swiftly closing the gate behind them. The initial stage of the zombie capture operation was a success. Next, the zombie was dragged into a fully transparent, sealed room in Ruby's basement. This facility had been designed by Ruby specifically for holding zombies. After placing the zombie inside, the three men left the room. Inside, she struggled desperately until Ruby pressed a button, filling the room with a misty gas. Moments later, the zombie fainted and stopped moving. This is a special sedative for zombies, extremely potent and will keep her immobilized for at least 2 hours, Ruby explained. 5 minutes later, after confirming she was completely still, we all entered the room. Her husband and the nerd lifted the zombie onto a table in the center of the room and secured her limbs and body firmly. The restraints were made of nanomaterials, so strong that even a car could not break them. With all safety measures in place, Ruby began an initial examination of the zombie's body. She gently placed her hand on the zombie's abdomen. Suddenly her expression darkened. Incredulously staring at her hand, we were startled by Ruby's reaction and quickly gathered around. Looking in the direction of Ruby's hand, a few seconds later, the skin on the zombie's stomach twitched slightly. Is that fetal movement? My mouth fell open in disbelief at what I was seeing. Caroline immediately touched her own belly, a sensation she was all too familiar with. Ruby turned serious and started a comprehensive examination of the zombie, with her husband assisting. Female zombie, aged between 28 and 30, transformed no more than 24 hours ago. As the transformation is recent, she is technically still in the process of changing. Her blood hasn't been completely contaminated, and nutrients are still being circulated within her body, so there's a high chance that the baby inside her is still alive, Ruby explained as her husband used a stethoscope to detect the faint heartbeat of the child inside the zombie, further confirming Ruby's hypothesis. Under these circumstances, is it possible for this child to be born? Caroline asked the question everyone was thinking. That will depend on the results of clinical trials. To prevent any unforeseen events, both our family and Noah's temporarily moved into Ruby's villa. We eagerly awaited Ruby's clinical data every day, with her husband tirelessly assisting in the lab for nearly a month. Surprisingly, the progress of Ruby's serum antibody experiment was very smooth. The female zombie showed no further deterioration, with even signs of halting the transformation. With the aid of medical drugs, the child inside the zombie miraculously survived. All of us secretly breathed a sigh of relief. In May, the weather was pleasant, and Caroline was close to giving birth. The three families became increasingly anxious. Her husband had already converted the basement's medical area into a birthing area. Ruby and I diligently learned how to be competent midwives every day. However, Caroline, with her belly still intact, showed no signs of labor. On the other hand, the zombie experienced intense contractions, seeming likely to go into labor before Caroline. Speaking of the zombie, thanks to Ruby's relentless efforts, her skin color had gradually shifted from gray-white to pale, and her black blood had also begun to show signs of vitality. While her eyes and teeth could never be restored to their original state, overall, she became more human-like. She even regained some intelligence, capable of distinguishing sounds and directions. Her previously aggressive behavior also somewhat subsided. Some of her internal organs began to function again. For Ruby's research, This was a significant breakthrough, indicating she was on the right track. 21, 2 years into the apocalypse mode. Although the homeland was vigorously rebuilding after the disaster, life and production had not yet returned to normal. There was no concept of a holiday on May Day, but the three families still gathered together for a lavish lunch. Halfway through the lunch, Ruby's watch suddenly signaled an alarm. Opening the monitor, she saw that in the basement laboratory, the zombie was screaming in pain. It's coming, everyone hurry. Thanks to Ruby's treatment, the zombie had long regained its nerves and could feel pain. At that moment, intense contractions were causing her unbearable pain. We dropped our bowls and rushed to the basement. In the transparent room, the zombie clung to the glass with both hands. Her expression was one of agony yet pleading, and though she had lost her sight, clear tears overflowed from her gray eyes. Ruby initiated the anesthesia to sedate the zombie. Although this could potentially affect the fetus's health, we had no other choice. Delivering the zombie's baby, we had to ensure our own safety first. In a few seconds, the zombie lay motionless. Once the anesthetic fog dispersed, we entered the room. We must perform a cesarean section quickly, or the baby will be at risk too. My husband quickly nodded. He had brought all the surgical tools with him, for safety. Only my husband, Ruby, and I, wearing protective suits, entered the room to operate on the zombie. My husband had simulated cesarean sections countless times before now. His technique was very skilled, and within minutes, he successfully extracted the baby from the zombie's womb. Before the surgery, we had already blocked the zombie virus from both mother and fetus. When my husband lifted the pink, healthy male infant, we knew it was a healthy human child. We all smiled in relief. Ouch, ouch, while my husband was still stitching up the zombie. Caroline looked pained and pale. The usually unshakable Caroline had chosen just this moment to go into labor. Quick, take her to the birthing room at my house. You all go ahead. There's no rush. It will take a while for her to be fully dilated. I'll finish with the zombie and come right over. Noah supported Caroline. I carried the newborn, and Ruby's family pushed Alice's baby stroller, hurriedly transporting them to the birthing area in my basement. I quickly shared techniques with Caroline, teaching her the Lamaze method to lessen the prenatal pain. Being her first childbirth, Caroline was naturally very nervous but cooperated well with us. After using the breathing techniques, her pain visibly reduced, and she relaxed. We quietly waited for her to be fully dilated. The waiting time seemed exceptionally slow since our primary doctor, my husband, hadn't returned yet. Isn't it taking too long? I was becoming anxious. Unlike the zombie, whom Ruby treated to regain some human traits, Caroline was fully human, and the psychological pressure on each of us was much less while delivering her baby. Moreover, she was undergoing childbirth in a fully conscious state, facing various dangers during labor and unknown risks like postpartum hemorrhage, which significantly increased the risk factor. Noah was even more nervous, prepared to return to Ruby's basement with the top otaku to find my husband. However, 5 minutes later, we received a dangerous signal from a top-notch homebuddy. In my basement, there's a laptop that connects to the surveillance systems of 3 households. I immediately turned it on, only to discover that the sealed room in Ruby's house, where the zombie was confined, was empty. What's happening? Where's the zombie? My lips trembled as I spoke, realizing the zombie was gone. This meant that my husband, who was alone stitching up the zombie, was in danger. This is bad. Ruby's face turned pale. Could she have woken up midway? I did reduce the dosage of the anesthesia to lessen the harm to the newborn, but it should have been enough to keep her asleep for over an hour. How could she wake up? I trust Ruby's expertise. At this moment, I need to keep calm. Ruby's watches can communicate over a local network, but the top-notch homebuddy only sent us a danger signal, without any messages. This indicates that the environment he and Noah are in doesn't allow for making noise, or they don't even have time to send messages. Thus, calling them now would be unwise. All I can do is check the security cameras to see if they are safe. I accessed all the surveillance devices in Ruby's house, only to find no one within the monitored area. Where have they gone? Pain made Caroline's hair wet with sweat, sticking to her face. Noah, where's Noah? It hurts so much. Caroline, delirious with pain, was still worried about Noah. Ruby and I didn't discuss the situation in front of Caroline, but she was also wearing a watch and surely received the danger signal from the top-notch homebuddy, knowing that Noah with him was Also in danger, this couldn't go on, an anxious mother could face complications during delivery. I quickly turned on all the shared surveillance devices, including those in my house and Caroline's. Nothing, nowhere to be seen. 3 living people and a zombie had just disappeared from our view. I was as frantic as an ant on a hot pan. Ruby, having dealt with major incidents before, was much calmer than me. There are blind spots in the surveillance, like bathrooms. They might have hidden there too. Avoid danger. In other words, if we can't see them, there's a 50% chance they are safe. I nodded, but the panic inside me didn't subside. If it were just them missing, and the zombie was still in our surveillance range, that could be explained, but the zombie was gone too. Could they be hiding together with the zombie? In the basement birthing room at my house, there were only me, Caroline, Ruby, my daughter Alice, and the newborn male infant of the zombie. Room full of women, a birthing mother. And infants, to put it bluntly. Any slight misfortune could take us all down. Caroline's contractions were getting closer together, and the baby could arrive at any moment. She curled up like a shrimp but still couldn't ease the pain. With 2 infants to look after, neither Ruby nor I could leave. Just as we were in disarray, one of the monitors flickered unnaturally as if the signal was being interfered with. Then, a face with a long scar appeared up close in the center of the screen. This was a face that haunted our nightmares. He was the leader of the raiders who had attacked us last time. He had returned, undoubtedly seeking revenge. Hey, long time no see, little mice in the villa. That disgusting face actually greeted us on the screen. I noticed one of his arms was cut off halfway, probably from an injury caused by a zombie during his last attack here. Severed to avoid infection. Ruby frowned. He has breached our monitored area, and our watches didn't even alarm us. The man on the screen seemed to hear our conversation. Don't be surprised. We've cut off all the alert signals. How else would we surprise you? He flaunted a tangled mess of wires in his hand to confirm his claim. Then he stared with wide eyes and leaned closer to the screen again. Let me show you something even more exciting. As he backed away from the camera, we saw that he was in Ruby's basement laboratory. The empty laboratory we had just seen appeared to be a fake image provided by the scar-faced man. Now, within the confines of that sealed room, 2 figures emerged. One was a zombie that had not yet awakened from anesthesia. The other lay face down on the ground, his back to us. He had been struck on the back of his neck by a heavy object, a dark pool of blood forming beneath him. The surveillance footage was a bit blurry, but I could still make out the figure to be my husband. They must have ambushed him while he was stitching up the zombie. Husband and the zombie were locked in a room together. Guess when this zombie will wake up? The man with the scar smirked maliciously. I have to save him. He needs me now, I said, my voice trembling uncontrollably, a sense of helplessness overwhelming me as the urge to rush out surged within me. Ruby suddenly embraced me from behind. Calm down, rushing out now will only expose you and won't help him. Currently, Noah and Old Way haven't appeared on the surveillance, indicating that they haven't been caught or even discovered yet. Ruby tried to rationalize with me. Old Way, a top-level homebody, was whom we all relied on. Old Way sent us a distress signal but hasn't returned here, which means they are likely trying to figure out a way to save little Tang. We had been hiding here, and Scarface doesn't know how many people are actually inside the villa. He's been threatening us verbally, aiming to draw us all out and capture us in one fell swoop, Ruby explained. I crouched on the ground, my body shaking incessantly as sheer terror and despair nearly drove me to vomit. What should I do then? The first time Alice saw me like this, her small arms wrapped around me, bringing me back to a semblance of clarity. Ruby activated a sonic device using her watch, but what good would that do? The zombies in this area had been almost completely eradicated by the military. Moreover, Scarface's gang had already entered the villa. Even if a large number of zombies were drawn here, it would be futile. That zombie sure can sleep. How much anesthesia did you guys use on her? Scarface looked at the monitors with a sinister interest. I carefully observed the surveillance footage. Besides Scarface, there were at least 5 other people standing in a corner. He had come prepared, and by initial estimates, he brought no fewer people than before. Some had stayed in Ruby's villa, so it was likely that others had stealthily infiltrated my home and Noah's. Ruby and I were so engrossed in watching the surveillance that we momentarily forgot Caroline was about to give birth. When I snapped back to reality, prepared to check on Caroline, I found her standing behind us, clutching her belly and staring intently at the monitor. "It's him," Caroline murmured, pointing at the screen. "Noah," she gasped suddenly, bending over in pain. Then, a stream of water flowed down her legs. Caroline's water had broken. I quickly helped her back to the delivery room, holding her hand tightly. "Listen, Caroline. You need to stay calm and lie down, or the baby could be at risk," I instructed. Urgently, Caroline was fully dilated, the pain unbearable. Ruby and I couldn't leave her side for even a moment. We helped stabilize her breathing while encouraging her to push during contractions. After a few attempts, I could even see a bit of the baby's head. It was almost a victory. "Keep pushing, Caroline," Ruby and I cheered her on. But a loud bang suddenly came from the side. I turned around to see something heavily striking the glass well of the basement. At this rate, the glass being shattered was imminent. The entrance to my home's basement, designed to withstand all manner of apocalyptic threats, was extremely secure and hidden. It was nearly impossible for them to break through the basement door, but the glass well was its only weak point. "They're trying to break in through the glass well," Ruby stated, no longer caring if Caroline could see. She had moved the laptop from the surveillance room directly next to the birthing bed. From the yard surveillance footage, we saw a group of about a dozen people were using a thick log to ram against the skylight glass of my house. We had reinforced the skylight glass with multiple layers, but now it had started to crack, and a few more hits would surely shatter it. I was immensely thankful that we had installed double defenses at the skylight. I quickly ran to the control switch in the basement and shut the steel door that separates the sunken garden and the basement. The door, seldom used, creaked and groaned along its tracks before it finally began to move. Just as the door was about to close, I heard the shattering sound of the skylight glass. The intruders had finally broken through. The custom-made door my husband and I had installed was extremely sturdy and thick, with excellent soundproofing qualities. As soon as the door was securely closed, all the sounds from outside disappeared, and our surveillance signal was lost too, probably cut off by the man with the scar. "Wah, wah, wah," a loud cry from a baby broke the momentary silence. Caroline's child was born. "It's a big, healthy boy," Ruby announced with relief as she cleaned the newborn, comforting Caroline. Caroline, pale and weak, managed a faint smile. We cut the umbilical cord, disinfected everything, and settled both Caroline and the baby before realizing that all was quiet outside. We had no idea what had happened to my husband, the ultimate homebody, and Noah. Our entire house's surveillance system had crashed by then, and the local network was also down. We couldn't receive any information from outside the basement. We still have one last option. My mind had been blank for a while, and I didn't grasp what Ruby was saying immediately. "Do you mean there's still a chance we could be saved?" Ruby nodded, then shook her head. "I don't know if we can be saved, but right now, this place is like a prison we've built ourselves. We need to escape first if we want to have a chance to do anything else." Hope reignited in my eyes. Ruby always had a way of presenting us with surprises, so I trusted her implicitly whenever she said there was a chance. Ruby led me to the door of the equipment room in my home's basement. This door could be remotely controlled by a watch to facilitate communication between us. The door could be opened if two of the three families used their watches to perform identical fingerprint recognition on the scanner. I knew Ruby had a deeper meaning, but I couldn't help but be curious. If the man with the scar has taken over all our homes, even if we can use this door to move between them, how can we escape? Ruby blinked. "There's a secret passage to the outside world in the equipment room, designed before you moved in after we bought these villas. The reason the door to this room is so complicated is probably to protect this last escape route." I nodded vigorously, tears welling up in my eyes, like a drowning person grasping a lifeline. "It's good that we have one person from each of the three families left." When Old Way and I were designing the password for this secret passage, it was quite a headache. We finally decided it would require a member from each of the three families to input their fingerprints to open this secret passage, emphasizing a "united we stand, together we escape" principle. "Ruby," my voice choked, unsure what to say, overwhelmed by their family's nobility. Ruby patted my shoulder. "Don't say anything. Just remember we're family." We moved Caroline to a wheelchair, Ruby pushing it, with Caroline holding her newborn, and I pushed Alice's baby stroller, gathering in front of the equipment room door. When the three of us entered our fingerprints on our watches, the door to the equipment room opened in response. At the same time, a faint rumbling noise came from underground. the sound of gears turning. Soon, a gap appeared behind a cluttered electrical box, just wide enough for a person to pass through. We folded up the wheelchair and the baby stroller, and then entered the secret passage one by one. Ruby felt around on the wall of the passage for a while and turned on the emergency light, then pressed another switch, and the door to the passage slowly closed behind us. The door fit so seamlessly with the wall that it was almost imperceptible that it had ever been opened. Before us lay a narrow corridor. The ground was damp, the environment chilly, but fortunately, the air circulation was good, and occasionally, a cool breeze brushed across our faces. We walked forward along the path in silence. In the corridor, I had no sense of direction, only aware that we had been walking for nearly 10 minutes and still hadn't reached the end. Along the way, we took several twists and turns. What if Scarface and his men discovered this secret passage? Caroline, now sitting in a wheelchair, had regained some strength and finally spoke up. They can't get in. If they try to force their way into the equipment room, it will trigger the self-destruct mechanism, and the entrance will be destroyed. I trust our husbands won't provide them with the fingerprint code. Thinking of our husbands, whose fates were unknown, we once again fell silent. We're almost there, I noted, feeling the air moving faster than before. We exerted a lot of effort, climbing up the rusty ladder. The secret passage led to the abandoned electrical well of a dilapidated factory. We had finally managed to escape. Shoo, listen. It sounds like someone, Caroline said, her hearing seemingly very sharp after having given birth. After quieting down, we indeed heard the sound of footsteps approaching. It sounded like more than one person. They couldn't have followed us here, could they? We quickly found a concealed spot to hide. Soon after, two people with flashlights frantically swept the area. Ruby, Caroline, they called out our names in hushed tones as they walked. The voices were familiar and comforting. It was Top Geek and Noah. They had also escaped and were looking for us, unable to hide their joy. Ruby and Caroline rushed out. They embraced, sharing the joy of reunion. I was happy for them, but looking behind them, I didn't see our husbands. My heart sank again. Noah, old way, my husband. I interrupted their joy. Anxious, Noah chuckled. Sister-in-law, don't worry, little Tang is fine. Noah wasn't one to exaggerate, and judging by his relaxed and joyful demeanor, he was likely telling the truth. I breathed a sigh of relief. Ruby and Caroline came over and took my hands. Top Geek began to recount the story we had missed. When they went back to Ruby's house to find their husbands, Top Geek received an alarm signal that the laboratory had been forcibly entered. Among us, only Top Geek's watch was connected to the laboratory's alarm function. Whenever there was an intrusion or other anomalies in the laboratory, his watch would automatically receive an alert. Since this function was still in the testing phase, only Top Geek's watch could receive the signal. Even Ruby's watch didn't have this feature. After receiving the alarm, Top Geek and Noah, not knowing the extent of the danger, dared not make any noise, so they quickly sent a signal to warn Ruby. Then they hid in the basement of Noah and Caroline's house. Noah's basement had been upgraded with defensive facilities after the apocalypse and also had a surveillance system installed, similar to my house. Before the apocalypse, Noah, being an outdoor live streaming enthusiast, had installed invisible cameras around his house for everyday filming. Unlike the surveillance system installed in our houses by Top Geek, which used different circuits, so when Scarface cut off our regular surveillance lines, he missed the recording equipment at Noah's house. Noah and Top Geek, through this filming and surveillance, saw Scarface and his men breaking into our three houses. At the same time, they saw our husbands in the laboratory, in danger. My husband was attacked from behind by Scarface and left unconscious, locked in the same room as a zombie. Scarface didn't have the code for the laboratory room, and once the door was closed, it couldn't be opened again. The transparent walls of the laboratory were made of a special material. Even weapons could not easily destroy it, but the scarred man never intended to let the door open again. His goal was to wait for the zombie to wake up and then have her bite her husband to death. The top otaku and Noah had originally planned to go to the lab to rescue the husband. Before they could finalize their rescue plan, the zombie woke up. After all, Ruby had used too little anesthetic. Zombie woke up, but my husband was still unconscious. The top otaku and Noah, watching the monitors, were on tenterhooks. They picked up some tools at hand to use as weapons and were ready to forcefully enter the lab. However, to their surprise, The zombie seemed to have retained some human sense and did not attack the unconscious husband. Instead, she touched her deflated belly with both hands, a puzzled expression on her face. Then she quietly curled up in a corner, motionless. The scarred man standing outside the lab was naturally furious but could no longer open the door. Eventually, cursing and swearing, he led a large group of men from Ruby's yard to mine. Seeing that the husband was all right, the top otaku and Noah decided not to rashly expose themselves, but the network had been sabotaged by the scarred man, and they couldn't contact us, leaving our side in complete disarray and anxious. How did you manage to escape and find us later? Did the scarred man just leave when he couldn't find anyone? Xiao Tian asked, puzzled. Noah, holding his newborn child in one arm and affectionately ruffling Caroline's hair with the other, replied, how could that be? My foolish wife's gang is ruthless and won't stop until they achieve their goals. Once they've broken in, how could they easily back off? So you guys, I was also confused. Even if Noah was skilled, it didn't make sense that just he and the top otaku could fend off a group of burly men armed with weapons and escape unscathed. Stop guessing, reinforcements arrived, Ruby said with a smile as she walked in. It seems they received the signal I sent. I truly admire Ruby. She was able to infiltrate an extremist organization alone and come back unscathed, relying not just on her innocent appearance but on endless wisdom and courage. Earlier, when Ruby activated the sonic device, I thought she was just following the old route, trying to attract a large group of zombies to attack the scarred man's group, but clearly, that method was ineffective. I thought Ruby was just using any method out of desperation. As it turned out, when she activated the sonic device, she not only sent out zombie-attracting sonic waves but also a distress signal. The relevant security departments, having monitored these sonic waves since we first used them, responded immediately to our distress signal. They dispatched the same military convoy that had previously helped us clear zombies from our community to perform a targeted search and rescue. The scarred man's group was disarmed and surrendered in less than 10 minutes. We figured you weren't in the basement's birthing room and must have escaped through the underground passage, so we came here to find you and bring you back, the top otaku said, patting my shoulder. Don't worry. Xiao Tang has been taken by a professional medical team for treatment. The doctor said he only has superficial injuries and will recover in a few days. 3 years after the apocalypse, I never imagined that we would have returned to a normal life and production. My husband has gone back to working at the hospital, and I have started teaching students online from home. We were successfully rescued after that raid by the scarred man. Ruby's research findings were fully handed over to the government, significantly advancing the research on a vaccine for the zombie virus. The vaccine has now entered the second phase of clinical trials. The response to the vaccinations has been very good. The government quickly began to rebuild the order of life and production. It seemed like the previous scenes of zombies and devastation were just a fleeting dream. Oh, and that zombie we used for clinical trials has regained 80% of human functions. While his intelligence remains at the level of a 2 to 3-year-old child, he no longer has aggressive or infectious traits. The government has also established a special management agency for these individuals to live normally and receive ongoing treatment. The child born from the zombie is a normal, adorable child, now adopted by Ruby's family. They named him Fuxing, meaning he is not only a blessing to Ruby's family but also a little star of hope in the apocalypse. And Alice, she's more than happy to act as an older sister to her 2 brothers. As a university professor, I'm now also doubling as a kindergarten teacher, providing educational activities for the 3 children. In short, we have moved beyond the apocalypse and embraced a new life. My husband and I might need to get treated again for our apocalyptic delusions. Time to stock up. Who knows when the next apocalypse might strike.